Chapter 286. The background of connecting to heaven. Great cold demon sect? Life-seizing immortal? Where did they come from? Shunjin frowned, muttering under his breath, his eyes revealing a hint of unease. Guwen continued, "Not sure, but judging from the voice, it's likely a massive creature from the sea. We had peace for just a few decades, and now another significant event is happening." Shunjin consoled, "Don't worry too much. The broken sea rift is so far from us. People of talent arise continuously in this world, and good will always overcome evil. We will get through this." Guwen nodded, but his thoughts were quite the opposite. The power behind the great cold demon sect had already reached the heavens. As Baizia would say, since ancient times, the great cold demon sect and other demon sects with significant chi fortune have been acting as the blade of the Holy Court. There are always some matters that the Holy Court can't handle directly. Of course, the Holy Court isn't dark. They simply view things from the perspective of the entire universe and often encounter situations where they must sacrifice some beings or have no choice but to annihilate an area filled with living beings. If the Holy Court has truly abandoned this place, what could be the reason? It surely couldn't be because of the divine exotic realm, right? The divine exotic realm has nothing to do with them. They could separate it out entirely. Guwen suspected there was a deeper reason he was unaware of. His divine sense probed, and the life-seizing immortal was not the heaven and earth flying immortal who fought alone against the three divine exotic ghost kings. Instead, it was a carefree primordial immortal. His arrival had interrupted that great battle. Guwen watched as the life-seizing immortal placed a treasure pagoda at the edge of the broken sea rift. It grew taller and taller, reaching through the clouds, no less than 100,000 feet tall, quite majestic. The life-seizing immortal then flew into the pagoda. The three divine exotic ghost kings fled into the broken sea rift, followed by the heaven and earth flying immortal, clearly aligned with the life-seizing immortal. Guwen was curious to see if any other carefree primordial immortals would take action within the next 100 years. He continued discussing the affairs of the world with Shunjin. They were both minor cultivators in the world of immortal cultivation. When talking about the happenings in the world, they mostly expressed envy. Not long into their conversation, Shunjin excused himself. Guwen also got up and went downstairs, ready to discuss the great cold demon sect with the disciples and cultivators in the valley. The shout of the life-seizing immortal had caused an uproar across the world. Wherever there were gathered beings, this matter was being discussed. When Guwen arrived at the chess area, Nine-Finger Divine Lord and Stealing the Five Elements were discussing the great cold demon sect with great cultivators from the Supreme Sect. Other disciples surrounded them, listening intently with tension. Shinshinzi sat among the crowd as well. Although he rarely spoke, he listened attentively. After Shinshinzi had spoken with Stealing the Five Elements, the two did not come into conflict. It seemed they had reached some agreement. At the time, Guwen hadn't listened because, in his eyes, these two couldn't stir up any trouble. The great cold demon sect has existed for 1,000,000 years. That life-seizing immortal is also a person from the legends. I didn't expect him to still be alive. Now we're really in trouble, lamented Nine-Finger Divine Lord. He didn't mention the Holy Court, clearly very wary of it. 1,000,000 years. The disciples listened with twitching eyelids, unable to fathom how long 1,000,000 years was. The younger ones felt a longing. They hadn't completely resigned themselves to fate yet. They always felt that there was hope. The Third Medicine Valley was only the first stage of their entry into the world of immortal cultivation. The world of immortal cultivation is full of stories where those with ordinary talent obtain great opportunities to change their destinies against all odds. Guwen also listened intently, as if he were listening to a story, occasionally exclaiming with the surrounding disciples or revealing an incredulous expression. Meanwhile, inside the main city of Sect, in a mansion, Lu Lingjun visited the courtyard of the Holy Mother of Western Spirit, where teacher and student sat opposite each other. The Great Cold Demon Sect is comparable to the Bitter Sea Buddha Sect. In terms of heritage, they are even stronger. If the Great Cold Demon Sect stands behind the Broken Sea Rift, we are in trouble. The Holy Mother of Western Spirit sighed, bringing up the existence of the Holy Court. This was the first time Lu Lingjun had heard the name of the Holy Court, and she was shocked. How vast is this universe? The Holy Mother of Western Spirit also suspected that this sea area had been abandoned by the Holy Court. Otherwise, the people from the Great Cold Demon sect wouldn't be so unrestrained, even giving out 100 years, clearly wanting large sects to evacuate promptly. Upon hearing this, Lu Lingjun couldn't help asking, 100 years? Only the immortal cultivation sects can evacuate, right? Will all the myriad living beings who stay behind really die? The Great Cold Demon sect has slaughtered so many living beings. The continents and sea areas affected by the Broken Sea Rift added together only make up a small area of the Great Heaven and Earth. To the Great Cold Demon sect, it's nothing. The Holy Court won't care either. The fall of the beings in this area won't make waves in the entire world. The Holy Mother of Western Spirit said somberly. Lu Lingjun furrowed her brows. The Holy Mother of Western Spirit then said, I need to make a trip back to find out the real reason behind the actions of the Great Cold Demon sect. Lu Lingjun nodded, beginning to consider the worst-case scenario. She was an ascender, so escaping wasn't a problem for her. But, having been in the Supreme Sect for so long, she cared about too many people. Her concern was how to help those she had relationships with. The Holy Mother of Western Spirit began to muse about the complexity of the affairs of the world. Initially, she truly thought the divine exotic realm was harming one side. But now it seemed the emergence of the divine exotic realm wasn't simple. Undoubtedly, there was an unimaginably powerful existence struggling behind it. Dark clouds covered the sky, and a continuous drizzle fell onto a mortal-seeking island. In a courtyard, Gu and Yang Jian and Hu Shaojian sat together, with Gu and listening to Hu Shaojian detail the Great Cold Demon sect. 3 days had passed since the life-seizing immortals shout. In those 3 days, various sects on the sea had publicly disclosed information about the Great Cold Demon sect, with various pieces of news reaching the listeners on Immortal Seeking Island. Yang Jian listened intently, his expression constantly changing as Hu Shaojian spoke of the Great Cold Demon sect, which appeared to be the most formidable on the demon path, with countless demon immortals within, making it seem invincible. The true calamity had descended. After a long time, when Hu Shaojian paused to sip his tea and moisten his throat, Guan asked, Have you managed to find out anything about the Reincarnation Path Emperor? The Reincarnation Path Emperor, one of Ji Xiaoyu's past lives, was always remembered by Gu, and Hu Shaojian shook his head, saying, I couldn't find anything. I even feel like this exalted figure doesn't exist. But since you mentioned him, he must indeed exist. It's just that my level is too low, at least within the Immortal Seeking Island. There's not a single clue. Guan didn't get angry. He gently moved on from the topic. Hu Shaojian put down his teacup. His gaze shifted towards Guan, hesitating to speak. After hesitating for a moment, he stood up, walked to the side, then knelt down and began to kowtow to Guan. What are you doing? Guan asked with a frown. Hu Shaojian looked up, pleading, I beg you, senior, to take me away. The Great Cold Demon sect's power is vast. The upper echelons of Immortal Seeking Island are preparing to evacuate. I am only a nascent soul realm cultivator. Within 100 years, I absolutely cannot escape the range that the Great Cold Demon sect wants to obliterate. Even if by chance I escape, who knows if I can survive elsewhere. Senior, you are a loose immortal. You come and go as you please. Can you take me with you? I will serve you like an ox or a horse. Yang Jian sat on the side, his feelings complex. This was a nascent soul realm cultivator. In the Supreme Sect, this was an existence looked up to by servant disciples, yet he didn't even have the confidence to survive at sea. Guan pondered and then said, Don't be anxious. For now, stay peacefully at Immortal Seeking Island. If the sea powers truly cannot withstand the Great Cold Demon sect, I will take you with me. Before that happens, help me keep an eye on the Sea Protection Mansion. If they truly intend to abandon Immortal Seeking Island, then I will come and take over. Hu Shaojian was stunned, not expecting Guan to still be concerned about Immortal Seeking Island at this critical moment. Yang Jian glanced at his master. It seemed like his master had no fear of the Great Cold Demon sect. His master referred to himself as a loose immortal. Could it be that loose immortal was not his realm, but just his identity? Hu Shaojian wanted to persuade Guwen, but feared offending him, so he could only agree. Guwen noticed his concerns and reassured him, "Don't underestimate this world. Otherwise, the divine, exotic, resentful ghosts in the sea-breaking rift would have already swept across the oceans, right?" Hu Shaojian felt persuaded by these words and promptly thanked Guwen Gu and waved his hand, helping him up, and invited him to sit and speak. Hu Shaojian continued to talk about the great cold demon sect. He knew a lot about it, but nothing about the life-seizing immortal. Guwen then began to think about how to control Immortal-Seeking Island. Firstly, he must arrange someone to act as a puppet while he stayed hidden. Using the various channels of Immortal-Seeking Island, he could collect more medicinal herbs, and besides, it sounded like a fun endeavor. It felt like preparing to play a management game, which he was quite looking forward to. To suppress Immortal-Seeking Island, he would need at least a wandering immortal. He had to think carefully about this candidate. Just like that, time swiftly passed, and the rain intensified. 2 ancient hours later, Guwen left with Yang Jian, returning to the forested mountains of the Supreme Sect. Yang Jian was no longer experiencing the limitless freedom step for the first time, but as his cultivation level increased, he grew more awestruck of his master's divine skills. "Master, is there really someone who can confront the great cold demon sect?" Yang Jian asked, his words still carrying a hint of cautiousness. He did not dare ask directly about his master's prowess, so he had to beat around the bush. While moving forward, Guwen responded, "Who knows? At any rate, your master, I'm not sure." "Just not sure?" Yang Jian was secretly alarmed. Just what was his master's background? Guwen was unaware of Yang Jian's thoughts. He had modestly underestimated himself, not expecting it would make Yang Jian even more amazed. Listening to Hu Shaojian, the great cold demon sect had taken on an unimaginably fearsome and evil persona in Yang Jian's mind, such an existence often being the ultimate antagonist in stories. Knowing that Guwen was confident in confronting the great cold demon sect, how could he not be surprised? "Jianer, cultivate diligently. Even if we survive this calamity, there will be no shortage of trials ahead. From ancient times until now, every great cultivator has persevered through countless hardships. The greater the crises, the more diligently one must cultivate," Guwen said earnestly. Yang Jian nodded, saying, "Disciple always keeps this in mind. I will strive to cultivate as diligently as you." How many years had it taken for his master to reach his current height? Yang Jian thought to himself, guessing surely it took tens of thousands of years. No, perhaps his master had even existed longer than the great cold demon sect, merely frolicking in the mortal world. He believed his master wouldn't deceive him. His master surely had also endured countless hardships and diligently cultivated to achieve his current level of cultivation. Guwen continued to instruct Yang Jian. Educating a disciple, after all, required occasionally teaching them, making it an enjoyable experience. Yang Jian, unaware of his master's inner thoughts, could feel his master's earnest intentions. Chapter 287. The Longevity Pact. As the year ended, snowflakes danced in the air. Inside the attic, Guwen was pouring tea for Yilan, who was recounting her experiences in the subsect. Having not seen each other for many years, Yilan now more than ever exhibited the demeanor of a great cultivator. Cultivators at the divinity transformation realm could become leaders everywhere on the continent, and naturally, her aura grew stronger with each passing day. This made Guwen find her even more charming. Back then, she was always hanging around him, the little girl who always followed him around. Now, she had become an existence that stood above tens of thousands, which made him feel not only nostalgic but also immensely proud. Her experiences in the subsect mainly involved power struggles and gaining profit. With LV Badian having paved the way, she always managed to secure victories in various conflicts, and overall she had a smooth journey. After discussing her own experiences, she asked Gu and how he had been over the years. Growing various plants, playing chess, and occasionally teasing the disciples for fun. "I'm quite content," Guwen said, looking at Yilan with a smile. Yilan raised her eyebrows and asked, Who is the girl downstairs? You've been wanting to ask that, haven't you? That's what Guin thought to himself, but he said aloud, her identity is not simple. I will only tell you, and you mustn't let it slip. The attic had a protective restriction, strong enough to ward off the probing of any cultivator below the divinity transformation realm. So Guin was not afraid of being overheard by Ji Xiaoyu. Yilan nodded expressionlessly. Guin took a deep breath and said, her name is Ji Xiaoyu. You understand, right? Yilan frowned and asked, isn't Ji Xiaoyu already deceased? Ji Xiaoyu had once been a renowned genius, famed for her beauty across the world. Her death had sparked much discussion within the Supreme Sect, and Yilan too had heard about it. She did die, but she is also reincarnated. Guin shared the information he got from stealing the 5 elements, his face full of emotion. Upon hearing this, Yilan too was taken aback. Such oddities existed in the world, and the background of Ji Xiaoyu was far beyond her expectations, even shattering her previous perceptions. Guin cautiously said, Junior sister, this matter must not be disclosed. Otherwise, it might bring us great trouble involving reincarnation, and the enemies we would attract are extremely formidable. Faced with such entities, the Supreme Sect would have to either submit or be annihilated. Yilan nodded, then exclaimed with emotion, honestly, I was just feeling jealous of her. But not anymore. The gap between her and us is too vast, not to mention whether she would take a fancy to you, senior brother. Even if she did, I think it would be a good thing. Haven't you always said that your talents are mediocre? And since your relationship with that senior has been severed, you must cherish her. Perhaps she could change your destiny. As she spoke, her expression grew very serious. Guin was moved by her attitude. Truth be told, due to his experiences in his previous life, Guin felt that it was impossible for someone to consider others completely selflessly. Even love started from individual needs. He had rejected Yilan many times, but she had remained consistent, and he didn't want her to suffer losses. Thus, he had always helped her. Of course, he was moved by this. At least Yilan had an irreplaceable position in his heart. But he hadn't expected Yilan to hope for his future to the extent of wanting him to cozy up to another woman. This silly girl. Guin glared at Yilan and said irritably, cherish what? She and I don't have that kind of relationship. At most, we are just Taoist friends, and in her heart, there isn't a place for romantic feelings, only the immortal path. That was the truth. He could feel Ji Xiaoyu's ambition. Whether in her past life or now, Ji Xiaoyu was not a woman obsessed with romantic love. Otherwise, she wouldn't have chosen death to resist a marriage arranged by her family in her previous life. Yilan rolled her eyes at Guin and said, senior brother, a woman staying in your building must have a significant background. How could she not have feelings for you? Even if you can't really pursue her, establishing a better relationship with her would still be beneficial for you. Although she had reached the divinity transformation cultivation level, she still felt that her path to immortality had come to an end. At least she no longer dared to hope for longevity, but she hoped Guin could have that chance. The reason? She couldn't really say. She just hoped for Guin to have a better life, and she felt he deserved it. From a young age, she always believed that her senior brother was worthy of all the good fortune in the world. Even when Guin rejected her, she wasn't angry. She liked her senior brother. Why should he have to comply with her wishes? Forget it, senior brother. I rather prefer a peaceful life. If she wishes to stay in the 3rd Medicine Valley, I will not treat her badly, and if she wants to leave, I won't keep her. She and I are ultimately not people of the same world. We should not hinder each other's paths. Guin shook his head and said, this too was his heartfelt truth. His goal was longevity, not marriage and children. Yilan blinked, unsure whether to feel happy or to sigh. Senior brother, if you don't achieve longevity in this lifetime, would you accept me? Yilan asked. Guin thought for a moment, then said, if neither you nor I achieve longevity, then let's just live out a mortal's life in the last 100 years. A mortal's life spans only a century, and before that, let both of us strive for the immortal path. Who knows what might be possible? Although I seek a stable life, I have not given up on cultivation. Yilan smiled upon hearing this, gazing at Guwen and said dreamily, Senior brother, with you saying this, I suddenly feel like the life limit isn't so scary. Guwen raised his hand to ruffle her hair, messing it up under her scolding gaze before he finally stopped. Later, Yilan brought up the Great Cold Demon Sect. She had also learned quite a lot about the Great Cold Demon Sect, which made her very anxious. She feared that the continent might not survive this calamity, so she had come back early to see Guwen to avoid regrets. Of course, she still held hope that being Sword Venerable Fudao. This was also the reason why most disciples of the Supreme Sect hadn't panicked. Over the years, the protection of Sword Venerable Fudao gave them faith and confidence to fantasize about and tackle all adversities. As long as Sword Venerable Fudao didn't abandon them or be defeated, they would surely be able to overcome the calamity. In the end, Guwen invited Yilan to stay, and naturally, she did not refuse. After night fell, Guwen took Yilan around the valley and even took her to watch others play chess. He also called Yang Jian over and had Yang Jian pay respects to Yilan. Yang Jian's attitude was very respectful, sensing that his master treated Yilan differently. His master calling him over must have a profound meaning. Could she be not a martial aunt but the mistress? Thinking this, Yang Jian also felt joyful, suddenly sensing that his master wasn't as unapproachable and even had a human side. That night, Yilan stayed at the Third Medicine Valley, occupying Gu An's room. While Guwen read, she practiced qi absorption cultivation. By late night, when Yilan opened her eyes, she saw Guwen still engrossed in his book, the candlelight illuminating his face, and a blissful smile appeared on her face. Actually, this was quite nice. Yilan watched Guwen for a while before closing her eyes. As dawn neared, the situation changed. Senior brother, you must be tired. Let me give you a shoulder rub. Why would I be tired? You're the one who's been cultivating all this time. It's fine. I'm at a higher cultivation level, I'm not tired. Is this a shoulder rub? I'm just checking your body. Afraid you might develop some problems from your usual routines. Wait. Don't touch any lower. Senior brother, how could your junior sister harbor any inappropriate thoughts towards you? I have a unique sorcery that can nurture your chi blood. That's not okay. Not there? At dawn, Guwen descended the stairs with a complex expression, and Yilan followed behind, her face radiant with a brilliant smile. Ji Xiaoyu emerged from the room, her gaze shifting toward the two, her brows slightly knitted. After descending, Guwen introduced the two women to each other but didn't talk much. Yilan then followed Guwen to practice exercises. Ji Xiaoyu stood still, watching. After a while, her brows relaxed. Yilan planned to leave after the Spring Festival. Guwen would take her with him to the Outer Gate City and the Mystic Valley, but not to Tianya Valley or other places. She didn't ask much, thinking that it was good for her senior brother to have secrets, indicating that he still concealed his identity. Naturally, she hoped her senior brother would become even more formidable. Chapter 288. 9 Profound True Fire. Calamity from the sky. This year's Spring Festival felt warmer than in previous years for Guwen, thanks to the company of Yilan. The day after the festival ended, Yilan left. She did not wish to become lost in the presence of her senior brother, as cultivating her immortal path was a major life event for her. At this stage, her main task was to diligently practice her cultivation. Despite the declarations of the life-seizing immortal from the Great Cold Demon Sect casting a shadow over the lands, it had not impacted the overall structure of the world. By the following year, the immortal cultivation world had returned to its former state, though various sects had begun dispatching more disciples to explore overseas. Years passed one after another, sunsets followed by moonrises. Third Medicine Valley saw disciples advancing each year, with new disciples joining, constantly increasing in number. This was because the Supreme Sect itself was growing stronger, which led to an increase in the number of servant disciples. These servant disciples needed positions to earn spirit stones. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. Guwen stood by the window, using his divine sense to survey a distant great battle. A great cultivator had gone to challenge the life-seizing immortal, even a heaven and earth-flying immortal. Alas, he did not even get to see the face of the life-seizing immortal, being suppressed by his disciple. This battle was watched by countless cultivators and demons. Not all beings wished to flee this region of the mortal world, especially sects that followed the righteous path, shouldering the responsibility to protect all living beings. Over the past decade, more than once had heaven and earth flying immortals challenged the life-seizing immortal, each time without exception being overwhelmed by the life-seizing immortal's disciple. Advancing to the tower had become a mere wishful thinking. The name of life-seizing immortal's pagoda spread far and wide. Known as the soul-calming pagoda, it was also an immortal path's supreme treasure. Guwen shook his head as he watched, the defeat of the heaven and earth flying immortal obvious, proving that he was not the savior of this region of the mortal world. He turned and went downstairs, feeling a presence entering the valley. It was the Holy Mother of Western Spirit from the Bitter Sea Buddha sect. The Holy Mother had found Shinshinzi, taking him to a secluded corner to speak, for which Shinshinzi had even set up a restriction. Inside the Supreme Sect, no one's divine sense could penetrate the barrier created by Shinzinzi's restriction, except for Gu. And did you get that clear? Shinshinzi asked, referring to matters concerning the Great Cold Demon Sect. The Holy Mother of Western Spirit took a deep breath and said, "This matter involves a holy king from the Holy Court, and though he cannot represent the entire decision of the Holy Court, this holy king has far-reaching connections and even the Buddhism sect does not wish to offend. After all, no one knows when Shengtian will emerge from seclusion." Holy King, Shinshinzi frowned and then asked, "What in this region of the mortal world could be of interest to a being like the Holy King?" The Holy Mother responded, "I am not entirely sure myself. I only found out that it has something to do with the reincarnation of a great power from the Holy Court. That great power might be a rival of the Holy King, reincarnated here in this region of the mortal world." Shinzinzi's frown deepened. Looking at him, the Holy Mother continued, "The situation has gone beyond redeeming. The Buddhism sect does not wish to risk involvement. Let's head back soon." Shinshinzi scoffed. The Buddhism sect doesn't want to risk involvement? What a joke! Whatever happened to universal salvation? The Holy Mother was taken aback by Shinzinzi's tone, clearly detecting the sarcasm in it. Something was off. Shinshinzi, who used to take pride in being part of the Bitter Sea Buddha sect, had never spoken this way before. "You go back. I am staying at the Supreme Sect," Shinshinzi stated seriously. The Holy Mother wanted to persuade him otherwise, but Shinshinzi took his leave with determined steps. What has actually happened? The Holy Mother stared at Shinzinzi's departing figure, filled with confusion. Her cultivation level was lower than Shinzinzi's, and her status was not as prominent, so she couldn't forcefully take Shinshinzi back. Thus, she refrained from further persuasion and could only take the news back to the Bitter Sea Buddha sect. Elsewhere, Guwen, walking towards a certain garden area, was also pondering the intelligence brought by the Holy Mother of Western Spirit. Holy King, reincarnation of a great power. Upon hearing about the reincarnation of a great power, his first thought was Ji Xiaoyu. However, upon reflection, it might not be Ji Xiaoyu. Ji Xiaoyu had reincarnated countless times, and if it truly were the rival of that Holy King, why hadn't the Holy King acted sooner? Moreover, he was curious about which role the Master of Divine Exotic Realm played in this feud. Perhaps he needed to seek an opportunity to discuss this with the Master of Divine Exotic Realm. Inside a dimly lit chamber, Zhang Buku put down his great axe. The strength energy around him began to dissipate, and his constantly swirling white hair gradually settled. He exhaled deeply, eyeing the great axe in his hand, his brow slightly furrowed. At that moment, footsteps approached. Zhang Buku clenched the axe tightly, causing it to vanish as he turned to look toward the entrance of the cave. He saw the Master of Divine Exotic Realm approaching slowly, and perhaps it was Zhang Buku's illusion, but he felt the Master seemed weaker than before. "Master!" Zhang Buku raised his hand in greeting and spoke. Throughout these years, the Master of Divine Exotic Realm had been conscientious in teaching him. At least Zhang Buku believed the master truly treated him like a direct disciple, not only instructing him in cultivation but occasionally also bringing him heavenly materials and treasures to enhance his ghost body and resist the backlash of exotic forces. The master of divine exotic realms stopped before him, sizing him up, and nodded slightly, saying, "Not bad. You are mastering the exotic powers." Zhang Buku couldn't help but ask, "Master, are you all right?" The master of divine exotic realm revealed a smile, though it was a chilling one, as he said, "Master is naturally fine, but there is something I need to ask of you, may I?" "What is it?" Zhang Buku did not agree immediately but asked instead, his mind alert as he feared the master of divine exotic realm might be plotting against the mysterious being that had been helping him in secret. The master of divine exotic realm lifted his right hand, within which a golden flame appeared, the light brightening the chamber. Zhang Buku's expression shifted slightly as he stared at the golden flame, unable to look away. The master of divine exotic realm spoke, "This is the 9 profound true fire, a flame of an extraordinary being. After inheriting it, you will possess a divine skill that will help you survive better. When you encounter the reincarnation of that being, the 9 profound true fire will act uniquely, letting you know at that time." "Who is that being?" Zhang Buku couldn't help but ask. The master of divine exotic realm responded, "He is a being whose cultivation far surpasses mine, and his status in the mortal world is beyond your imagination. I am passing this flame to you, hoping that you will find him in the future and protect him as much as possible. He will be the chance for us to overturn our fate." Zhang Buku was stunned. The master of divine exotic realm looked at the flame in his hand, his gaze wandering, then said, "The truth is, my existence is also for dealing with this being. But now that my backing is prepared to forsake me, I have no choice but to turn against it." Zhang Buku frowned and asked, "Master, who is your backing?" The master of divine exotic realm sighed, "It is an existence that can manipulate beings at will, akin to an immortal god in the hearts of the masses. Not only me but many forces serve him, including the continent you come from. The holy land of the 7 stars spirit realm also serves him and helped me break the heaven and earth barriers, opening up the sea-breaking rift. The 7 stars spirit realm." Zhang Buku naturally knew of this power. He hadn't imagined that the long-destroyed 7-star spirit realm was still connected to the sea-breaking rift. "Well, I can't tell you too much, lest you invoke temporarily insurmountable karma. Just remember, when you encounter someone that causes the 9 profound true fire to act unusually, you must support him. He will be the greatest opportunity you will ever encounter, and the only hope for you to be free of exotic forces." The master of divine exotic realm said, squinting at Zhang Buku with a serious look. Zhang Buku frowned and asked, "And what about you, master?" The master of divine exotic realm placed his palm on Zhang Buku's chest, injecting the 9 profound true fire into his body. The true fire wafted, numerous sparks flashing across the master of divine exotic realm's face, making his expression look even more terrifying. He spoke in a sinister tone, "I have become a discarded piece, and fate has already presented itself before my eyes." Zhang Buku opened his mouth to say something, but the raging 9 profound true fire surged through his body, rendering him speechless. Soon, his consciousness drifted into confusion. In a grand hall flickering with firelight, an old man in a black robe sat on a lotus pedestal, which was a black lotus swirling with dark red flames. He had a powerful presence, his unbound hair adding to his imposing aura. Looking up at the ceiling of the grand hall, one could see dark red flames churning like an inverted ocean, constantly surging. This was inside the soul-calming pagoda, and this black-robed old man was the life-seizing immortal of the great cold demon sect. Suddenly, the life-seizing immortal spoke, "Disciple, put some pressure on them." His voice echoed within the hall, as if many people were shouting in unison. Soon a voice came from outside the hall, "Yes!" Simultaneously, at the top of the soul-calming pagoda, a white-robed Taoist who had been meditating slowly stood up. Holding a horsetail whisk, He was tall and emaciated with white hair arranged under a Taoist hat. He looked down at the vast sea, his expression indifferent. The soul-calming pagoda was located directly above the sea-breaking rift, a massive rift that stretched dozens of miles wide, with no visible ends. The white-robed Taoist looked into the distance, raised his left hand to his mouth, and began to chant softly. As he chanted, visible ripples spread out in the space around him. Seconds later, his right hand suddenly waved the whisk. With this motion, the seas on either side of the sea-breaking rift abruptly rose, forming towering waves with the potential to engulf the heavens. He waved the whisk again, and the terrifying waves on both sides swept uncontrollably toward the distance. After doing all of this, the white-robed Taoist paused, then looked up at the sky and waved his whisk toward the heavens 3 times. At dusk, Guwen rode on the blood prison Great Saint into the entrance of the third Medicine Valley, followed by Yang Jian and Li Ling Tian, who walked behind with a bruised face, resembling a defeated rooster. "Master, won't this lad be ruined?" The blood prison Great Saint couldn't help but ask. His tone was not one of concern, but rather filled with mockery. Li Ling Tian, hearing this, glared at him. Guwen spoke. "If he can't endure, he can leave on his own." Years ago, when he had visited Tianya Valley, Luo Hun had even asked him to bring a message, hoping Li Ling Tian would return to the palace. However, Li Ling Tian did not wish to go back. Although he often got beaten, he was indeed getting stronger. Defeating Yang Jian had become his obsession. Just as Li Ling Tian was about to speak, he suddenly sensed something and looked up, his eyes widening in shock. Guwen, Yang Jian, and the blood prison Great Saint all looked up, and the disciples in the valley did the same, their expressions increasingly changing, as if they were witnessing something terrifying. Chapter 289. Unbelievable Methods at Dusk. The sky was a fiery red as meteors from outer space streaked across, creating a magnificent scene. As these meteors fell, a vast heavenly fire descended, giving all beings the feeling that the sky was collapsing. What is that? How can there be such a huge fire in the sky? Will it affect us? Don't worry, we are within the Supreme Sect, protected by the sect-protecting formation. Could it be the demon cultivators from the Great Cold Demon Sect causing trouble? The disciples within the Third Medicine Valley engaged in a heated discussion, and the great cultivators, who had been playing chess, stood up and vanished from their spots. The 9-fingered Divine Lord looked up, frowning. Sitting opposite him, stealing the 5 elements, remarked, "This divine power is no ordinary feat." The 9-fingered Divine Lord looked at stealing the 5 elements and asked, "You've been traveling a lot these years. What exactly have you been searching for?" Facing his inquiry, stealing the 5 elements did not respond but simply pointed upwards towards the sky. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the valley, Guwen was riding on the back of the blood prison Great Saint, also looking at the sky. He could feel that the meteors and the sea of fire in the sky were transformations of mana, deployed by someone possessing great divine power at the heaven and earth flying immortal level, affecting a vast area. It seemed that the century-old agreement was merely an ultimatum. During this period, the Great Cold Demon Sect would continue to attack, forcing the common people to flee. Of course, there was another possibility that they sought to force out a specific individual they were searching for. Due to personal vengeance, the commoners suffered, giving Guwen a different understanding of the Holy Court. The Holy Court overall had good intentions, but inevitably had its corrupt members. Perhaps their way of thinking differed from Guwen's. They could protect the common people but also ignore them. Yang Jian glanced at Guwen, and seeing his calm demeanor, he felt reassured. With his master around, even if the sky fell, he wouldn't be afraid. Li Ling Tian approached Yang Jian and discussed the strange phenomenon in the sky with him. Guwen patted the back of the blood prison Great Saint, signaling him to move forward. As the blood prison Great Saint took a step, a light curtain rose in the horizon, visible in all directions. It was the Supreme Sect's sect-protecting Great Formation. That was quick. Guwen was secretly pleased. The Supreme Sect had not faced tribulations in many years, yet remaining vigilant indicated that the high ranks weren't overly dependent on sword venerable Fudao. Soon, the entire Supreme Sect was enveloped by the light curtain of the sect protecting Great Formation, providing relief to all the cultivators within. Various sects and cities across the world activated their large formations, but inevitably, there were places that remained unprotected, and many beings in those places were vulnerable. In the North Sea Mountains, at the Mountain God Temple, Sage Xian Miao sat on the ground, gazing at the strange phenomenon in the sky, furrowing his brows. His concern was not for his safety, but rather for the well-being of the common people across the world. How could mere mortals withstand this sweeping blaze? Sage Xian Miao turned to look at a stone statue in the courtyard, one he had carved himself depicting the mountain god. Although he saw the mountain god once a month, in his heart, he always felt a great distance from the divine. He turned back and began to kowtow to the divine statue of the mountain god. As meteorites continued plunging towards the earth, the fire enveloping the sky drew closer, intensifying the fiery hue between heaven and earth. Just then, all the flowers, plants, and trees across the continent emitted flickers of green light, swiftly rising upward like sparks growing stronger rapidly. A farmer clutching a hoe in the mountains was surrounded by the green light coming from all directions, causing him to panic. In the cities, terrified civilians saw trees within their courtyards trembling and releasing green light orbs that floated up towards the sky. Within the palace, Li Xiandao stood at the entrance of the imperial study, observing the unusual appearance of the flora, his expression subtle. At that moment, beings across the continent, including demons, were startled by the surrounding phenomena, as flowers, plants, and trees were ubiquitous. In the Third Medicine Valley, Guwen dismounted and looked around. The vegetation within the Supreme Sect hadn't emitted green light, so the disciples were all puzzled by the phenomenon in the sky, unaware of another spectacular sight beyond the Supreme Sect. However, as the green light from plants everywhere rose to a certain height, even the cultivators inside the Supreme Sect could see it. Various discussions erupted among them. Guwen stood under a pavilion, watching this scenario unfold. Xiaoyu also emerged from the house and joined him. "It seems someone is protecting this continent," Xiaoyu said, her eyes reflecting the green light rising to meet the massive inferno falling from the sky, as if two worlds were about to collide in a mesmerizing display. The upper half of Gu An's face was illuminated by the fire, while the lower half was tinged with green. He asked in astonishment, "You mean to say a cultivator is behind this? How high must their cultivation level be?" Xiaoyu gave Gu a look, although she didn't think Gu had a vast cultivation. But this guy couldn't be this clueless. Gu often brought Yang Jian out, who was growing rapidly, showing that Gu was not simple. Regardless of what Gu concealed, his knowledge was not something ordinary cultivators could match. "Perhaps it was Sword Venerable Fudao who made a move," Xiaoyu said softly, her gaze returning to the horizon. "Good guess." Gu mentally gave Xiaoyu a thumbs up, his eyes still fixed on the sky. Under the gaze of all beings on the continent, the vast green light collided with the sea of fire, and following a brief somber moment, the sky radiated intensely bright light, like endless fireworks exploding. After the brief silence, the earth trembled, and strong winds fell from the sky, though not enough to threaten the land and mountains. The creatures across the land all sighed in relief, now understanding that the mysterious green light was there to protect them, to block the descending heavenly fire. However, they didn't know that not all continents and islands had protectors. Gu protected only the continent he was on, and while the beings there were excited and grateful, countless others perished in despair. At the Soul Calming Pagoda, atop the pagoda, a white-robed Taoist suddenly opened his eyes, expressing surprise with a grunt. He attempted to divine the situation but couldn't make any accurate predictions, his expression growing increasingly bizarre. He suddenly became interested and then vanished from the spot. Far away in the Supreme Sect, Gu was chatting with Xiaoyu when he suddenly sensed a rapidly approaching presence, sighing involuntarily. "Why must someone always be looking for death? I'm going to check on Mystic Valley. We'll talk later," Guan said, heading towards the transmission array platform. Xiaoyu was not puzzled and looked up at the sky alone, admiring the powerful divine skills of Sword Venerable Fudao. Underneath a nearby tree, stealing the 5 elements and the 9-finger divine lord, sitting opposite each other at a chessboard, also looked up at the sky, paying no attention to Guan stealing the 5 elements spoke. The trouble has ultimately been drawn here. The guy has arrived. The 9-finger divine lord turned to him, asking, "Who is this guy?" A pupil of life-seizing immortal, the real person Bai Hong, a renowned genius from the great cold demon sect, with unfathomable cultivation. Stealing the 5 elements responded. The 9-finger divine lord's face subtly changed. Clearly, he had heard of Bai Hong's name. Stealing the 5 elements chuckled. There's going to be a show to watch. Geniuses all have one flaw: excess confidence. Not far off, Shinshinzi, while staring at the sky, was also listening to Stealing the 5 elements conversation. He couldn't help but think of the hand that had been placed on his shoulder that night and began to sympathize with Bai Hong. There were many hidden great powers in the world. No matter the cultivation level, one should never underestimate this world. This was the greatest realization Shinshinzi had after leaving the Bitter Sea Buddha sect. In another place, under the red dawn sky, Bai Hong rapidly flew through, unfazed by the sweeping fire. As he passed over vast expanses of water without looking down, his gaze had fixed on a distant continent. Within his divine range, many great cultivators were resisting his divine power to protect various beings. Yet, that particular continent was special. Its methods piqued his interest, and moreover, he was unable to deduce the cause and effect of its mana. Perhaps the individual behind it was related to the person his master sought. Thinking of this, Bai Hong's eyes gleamed with anticipation. He was acting not only on behalf of his master but also to seize an opportunity for himself. Snap! A hand suddenly pressed onto his shoulder, bringing his full-speed flight to an immediate halt, causing his mana and chi blood to surge chaotically. And he even felt a strong discomfort as if his primordial spirit was about to leave his body. When he tried to break free, he was horrified to discover that he had lost control over his body and soul. He couldn't even achieve primordial spirit emergence, which made him widen his eyes and instinctively panic. In an instant, Bai Hong theorized many possibilities. Bai Hong, a 150,908-year-old 9 layers of heaven and earth flying immortal, is lamentable to die here. Guan looked at Bai Hong's lifespan and thought so. Guan didn't employ his soul-capturing skill but prepared to directly annihilate Bai Hong. He intentionally allowed Bai Hong to wait for a few moments to fully experience this despair, which also served as a punishment for his crimes. Bai Hong felt the pressure on his shoulder lessen and was about to speak when the hand suddenly tightened. With a squeeze from Guan, Bai Hong instantly turned to ash, his soul dispersing without a sound. He then disappeared from the spot. Back in the forest around Mystic Valley, Guan pretended to inspect medicinal herbs, and a notification popped up before his eyes. He successfully seized 38,000 years of lifespan. Not too bad. Guan wasn't worried about life-seizing immortal coming for revenge. If he came, Guan would kill him. Could the carefree primordial immortal threaten the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma? If a stronger presence appeared and he was uncertain of his chances, he would flee. So far, it seemed unlikely that the Holy King would make a move, as it would hurt his image. Otherwise, why wouldn't he personally search for his enemy's reincarnation? Being able to summon the great cold demon sect showed that the Holy King had his reservations. The sea of fire in the sky lasted for 30 minutes before completely dissipating. The green light enveloping the continent transformed into a sea of clouds, dispersing with the wind, and night fell. Although the world had darkened, the spirits of all beings remained unsettled for a long time. When Guan returned to the 3rd Medicine Valley, Xiaoyu had already returned to her house. He could only join a group of disciples gathered in the chess-playing area, who were discussing the earlier phenomena. With stealing the 5 elements and the 9-finger divine lord present, the disciples could greatly expand their knowledge and also learn about the incredible methods of Sword Venerable Fudao. Chapter 290. the identity of the senior inside the soul-calming pagoda. Life-seizing immortal opened his eyes, a frown creasing his brow. His eyes filled with doubt and suspicion. Why has his aura ceased? Life-seizing immortal began to cast spells and calculate. He did not consider the possibility that Bai Hong had really died. After all, he knew how high his disciple's cultivation level was. Within the same realm, Bai Hong had the power to suppress 3 divine exotic ghost kings single-handedly, which showed how terrifying his strength was. Even if he encountered a carefree primordial immortal, he would not die without a trace. However, no matter how he calculated, he could not deduce Bai Hong's whereabouts. Bai Hong's karmic ties were still fading away. This indicated that Bai Hong had most likely fallen, and moreover, had been scattered to the winds, with the heaven and earth rules erasing the marks of his existence. Life-seizing immortal's eyebrows knitted tightly together. His heart filled with shock and anger. Had a carefree primordial immortal made a move? To achieve such a feat, it would certainly not be a low-level carefree primordial immortal. The first thing life-seizing immortal thought of was a being from the Holy Court. How could such a formidable existence hide in this mortal world region? In life-seizing immortal's mind, the strongest beings in this mortal world region were at most in the heaven and earth flying immortal realm. The sex here merely touched upon powers from outer heaven. A master of divine exotic realm was sufficient to suppress this mortal world region for so many years. How could a carefree primordial immortal possibly be lurking here? Wait, life-seizing immortal suddenly thought of the 7 stars spirit realm. Although his impression of the 7 stars spirit realm was mediocre, he had some recollection. The 7 stars spirit realm had always curried favor with the Holy King he supported. The Holy King disdained the 7 star spirit realm, but some under the Holy King had received benefits from the 7 star spirit realm. To some extent, one could say the 7 star spirit realm was a force on the same side as him. He remembered a Taoist friend mentioning that the 7 star spirit realm had sought help before. However, the Taoist friend thought the 7 star spirit realm was not significant enough to warrant his intervention, so he assigned them a task. Consequently, just as the 7 star spirit realm had assisted the divine exotic realm's emergence, it was dismantled because some residual forces still existed, so his Taoist friend didn't think much of it, assuming it was just a local power struggle. Now it occurred to him, could it be that this mortal world region was hiding something? Could it have something to do with that reincarnated being? Life-seizing immortal's eyes flickered, not with fear, but with a hint of delight. The massacre of the common people was not his main goal. All of this was to force out the reincarnated being. Now that signs had begun to show, how could he not be pleased? Immediately, he took out an ancient bronze oil lamp and cast spells towards the wick. It's time to call the old fogies together. The catastrophe triggered by Bai Hong had consequences far and wide, its extent immeasurable. The continent where the supreme sect resided was spared from catastrophe, leading many sects to speculate that it was Sword Venerable Fudeo's doing, causing his name to spread like wildfire across the continent once again. When the beings of the continent were excited and in awe, the sea was deadly silent. Numerous islands and landmasses had been turned into seas of fire. Could ordinary immortal cultivation sects withstand divine powers unleashed by Bai Hong? Even if the sects formed their formations in time, they could not hold back the sky-high flames. This was one of the reasons Gu En had taken action. This heavenly fire caused 1/3 of all creatures in the mortal world region to die, a staggeringly large number. After the disaster had passed, on the 7th day, Gu En came alone to a mortal-seeking island, where the atmosphere within was grave, with significantly fewer cultivators coming and going, and a tense mood pervading the streets. Judging by the buildings within the city, it had not suffered from the heavenly fire's onslaught, but the surrounding seascape was littered with countless dead fish and demonic creatures, showing that a mortal-seeking island was within the reach of the heavenly fire as well. The divine skills of a heaven and earth flying immortal were enough to obliterate all beings. Gu En called over Hu Shaojian, who heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing him. "Elder, I'm so glad you've come." Hu Xiaojian's tone held a hint of resentment. 7 days earlier, he truly thought he was going to die on a mortal-seeking island. Though he had a narrow escape, he trembled with fear every day, dreading the sudden arrival of another catastrophe. Guan teased, "That's scared." Hu Shaojian nodded. "How could I not be? Did you see that great fire? It was terrifying, blotting out the sky. Just imagining the cultivation level of the person behind it scares me." He wanted to say it might far surpass that of a loose immortal, for there were many loose immortals on Immortal-Seeking Island, and he had occasionally witnessed loose immortals in combat, which allowed him to make comparisons. But then he thought of Guan being a loose immortal and immediately held his tongue. "Don't worry," Guan consoled. "Evil has never triumphed over good. The person behind the scenes will definitely face retribution. In fact, the orchestrator of this catastrophe, Bai Hong, was already dead." The reason Guan had come so late was to guard against a sudden assault from Life-Seizing Immortal on the Supreme Sect. Life-Seizing Immortal had not shown up, and, given his capabilities, he must have known of Bai Hong's demise. His absence likely meant he was plotting something. Guan felt there was a good chance he was shaking the tree to see what falls. The Great Cold Demon Sect, after all, was a colossal force in the world, with countless cultivators whose numbers were difficult to estimate. Later, Guan followed Hu Shaojian around to learn the situation on Immortal-Seeking Island. According to Hu Shaojian, after experiencing this calamity, the island master was clearly planning to abandon Immortal-Seeking Island. He had already instructed people to transport part of his property and disciples away, and within the Sea Protection Mansion, everyone was in a state of panic, with cultivators like Hu Shaojian unsure of where to go. Previously, Immortal-Seeking Island was their home and their greatest support. The Sea Protection Mansion would not take them with them. After hearing this, Guan did not offer an opinion but asked Hu Shaojian to take him to purchase medicinal herbs, which made Hu Shaojian even more nervous. He feared this was Guan's last visit to Immortal-Seeking Island. An hour later, the two arrived at Hu Xiaojian's courtyard, and after Guan sat down, Hu Shaojian immediately poured wine for him. Guan did not refuse, and his attitude made Hu Shaojian feel somewhat more at ease. Only after Hu Shaojian had poured the wine did Guan speak. "Rest assured, I truly wish to obtain Immortal-Seeking Island. Soon I will send a wandering immortal to take over Immortal-Seeking Island, and then your standing within the Sea Protection Mansion will rise. You, on the other hand, should diligently cultivate, so in the future you can be worthy of a high position." "Wandering immortal?" Hu Shaojian trembled slightly, tentatively asking, "Elder, might I know who you truly are?" Guan, being only with a loose immortal cultivation level but able to invite a wandering immortal, suggested that Guan had the backing of a great power. This was a pleasant surprise for Hu Shaojian. No matter how strong one person was, they could not compete with a vast force. Guan replied, "It's better for you not to inquire about my identity. Knowing too much is of no benefit to you. Even if we truly can't withstand an attack from Life-Seizing Immortal in the future, I will take you away. I have a place where you can live in peace. However, before that happens, I want to take a gamble. What if a great power manifests from the sea to crush that Life-Seizing Immortal?" Hu Shaojian nodded vigorously. Whatever the case, his job was to cling to Guan's coattails. Of course, deep down, he believed Life-Seizing Immortal was unbeatable. The previous heavenly fire had left too deep of a scar on his psyche, and thinking about it still frightened him. "Elder, what do you need me to do now?" Hu Shaojian asked respectfully. Chapter 291. Do you want to join the Great Cold Demon Sect? Guan had stayed in Hu Xiaojian's residence for an ancient hour. After he left, Hu Shaojian was brimming with excitement, and his face was a bouquet of smiles. The predecessor had entrusted him with so many matters, which assuredly meant he wouldn't easily forsake Immortal-Seeking Island. He hadn't deceived him. Moreover, what need had the predecessor to deceive him? He was just a minor cultivator at the nascent soul realm. If the predecessor wished not to take him, a single stern glance would have sufficed to silence any further pleas from him. Meanwhile, Guan had returned to the premises of the Supreme Sect, pondering, as he walked into the Third Medicine Valley, which wandering immortal should assist him. Wandering immortals were not minor cultivators. How could one easily control them? The nine-fingered Divine Lord was not an option, for Guwen feared exposing himself. Given that the nine-fingered Divine Lord had been to Immortal-Seeking Island, neither Shinshinzi nor stealing the 5 elements were reliable. Guwen was not in a rush. There was still time. If need be, he could use the Mortal Jade to sway someone, asking Mortal World Peak to dispatch a wandering immortal to Immortal-Seeking Island to assist him. Now as the Peak Master of Mortal World Peak, which was rivaled only by Great Cold Demon Sect in strength, and surpassed it in heritage, he felt Mortal World Peak would not fear the Great Cold Demon Sect. The Great Cold Demon Sect needed to do the Holy Court's dirty work to survive, whereas Mortal World Peak was different. It could hold office in the Holy Court. Over the long years, Mortal World Peak had sent how many immortals to the Holy Court? Guwen believed Mortal World Peak would not fear the Great Cold Demon Sect. Of course, Mortal World Peak would not oppose Great Cold Demon Sect unless sufficient benefits tempted them to dare offend both the sect and its backing, the Holy King. Reflecting on this, Guwen suddenly felt sentimental. No matter how high one's cultivation realm, one could not escape the web of relationships and favors. Only those strong enough to disregard the entire immortal path could act recklessly and willfully. The karmic ties of the world were too complex, with the karma of all beings interlinked in a tangled mesh. Even the weakest beings, when followed through their karmic associations, were connected to immensely powerful entities. Guwen surveyed Medicine Valley and did not spot Nine-Fingered Divine Lord or stealing the 5 elements, but found Shinshinzi, who was engrossed in studying Journey to the West. He could not understand Shinzinzi's fascination with Journey to the West, and felt that he had grown increasingly distant from the Bitter Sea Buddha sect, barely mentioning Buddhism these days. Guwen did not disturb Shinshinzi but instead headed towards his loft. Compared to worrying about the affairs of the world, what to read next concerned him more. With strange occurrences being commonplace in books through the ages. Recently, Guwen took pleasure in reading histories. 5 years later, 210-year-old Guwen practiced his exercises in Mystic Valley and glanced at his attribute panel. Realizing he was short just under 600,000 years from a 2 billion-year lifespan compared to others' understanding of their own cultivation level, Guwen felt a greater sense of achievement watching those numbers of lifespan. But was it really just lifespan? These numbers were clearly his cultivation. After morning practice, Lu Jujia approached Guwen, seeking guidance on the primordial reincarnation skill. Since lifting his cultivation restriction, his maximum lifespan had broken through to 410 years. Consequently, Guwen taught him a more potent primordial reincarnation skill. Despite his diligent practice over the many years, he still had much to learn about the technique. Guwen listened and then patiently guided him, enlightening Lu Jujia with a few words, which left him thrilled. Through the primordial reincarnation skill, he was sure his senior brother was no ordinary person and clearly also practiced this cultivation technique. With the access to medicinal herbs his senior brother had, he was bound to far surpass him. After imparting his advice, Guwen turned and departed. Lu Jujia didn't follow, instead standing still and savoring his words. Guwen walked into the forest and followed the path leading to the 8 scenic caves. By now, the 8 scenic caves were no longer a secret needing concealment, with Lu Jujia aware of his secret abode beneath Mystic Valley. Given the chance, Lu Jujia would watch over the disciples entering the forest, anxious lest any covet his senior brother's cave. Mystic Valley was never short of spies. Guwen arrived within the 8 scenic caves, first picking ripe medicinal herbs, then directing the poison corpse to plant anew. The origins of myriad poison mystic skill left by Jiang Qiong had started to bear fruit. Although he couldn't exploit the poison corpse to seize life from the herbs, sowing was straightforward without too much concern. He lay down under a green vine tree, and quickly 2 tendrils stretched over his shoulders and began massaging them. The green vine tree possessed spiritual wisdom, but on ordinary days, it preferred silence. Guwen didn't press it. Rather, he relished the tranquility of life in the 8 scenic caves. Accustomed to life in Medicine Valley, taking the time to be alone in the 8 scenic caves was also enjoyable. He planned to stay overnight, as someone would visit him that evening. After finding a comfortable position, he pulled out a history book purchased from Immortal-Seeking Island, recording the rise and fall of a powerful force. Time swiftly passed. Until late at night, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Guwen remained seated and did not even cast a glance that way. Soon, a figure approached him, accompanied by a faint fragrance. The visitor stood with her hands on her hips, clad in an exquisite purple robe, ornate with jade beads on her belt. Her long hair casually tied and 2 wooden hairpins inserted. Her celestial beauty cloaked behind errant strands of black hair, a subtle smile adorning her face, and her eyes sparkling with mischievous delight. Guwen lifted his head to look at her, appraising her, then chuckled. "Long time no see. How is it you seem younger? Did you practice some forbidden art?" The person standing before him was none other than Jiang Qiong, the creator of the 8 scenic caves. Juhua sect, founded by Jiang Qiong, was now a top sect in the immortal cultivation world, even collaborating with the Supreme Sect. Of course, Juhua sect's overall strength didn't yet match the Supreme Sect. "What nonsense, your martial master already appears youthful." Jiang Qiong glared at Guwen, then slid off her shoes, placing her bare feet on the grass. She stretched languidly inside. "This place still feels comfortable after so many years, just like home." Guwen stood up and chuckled. "I've kept that coffin of yours. Want to lie inside for a while? Looking for a beating?" Jiang Qiong raised her hand to strike Guwen, who promptly dodged. She huffed and then inquired, "Little brat, feeling anxious lately?" Guwen asked curiously, "Why would you think so?" The life-seizing immortal from the great cold demon sect declared he would wipe out all life. "How can you not be anxious? You're the one who fears death the most." "Well, sure, it is worrying, but what use is angst? When the sky falls, there are tall ones like you to hold it up." Guwen spread his hands and spoke, eliciting a chuckle from Jiang Qiong, seeing him still as light-hearted as ever. Jiang Qiong took a step closer and whispered, "Would you like to join the great cold demon sect?" Guwen gave her a peculiar look. He didn't always keep an eye on Jiang Qiong, only sending his divine sense her way occasionally when she came to mind. Upon sensing no danger, he would swiftly retract his focus. He hadn't expected Jiang Qiong to establish ties with the great cold demon sect. How did she manage that? Guwen began to explore Jiang Qiong's karmic ties while asking, "You know someone from the great cold demon sect?" A flood of karmic images entered Guwen's vision as he saw her past. It turned out the continent from which the ephemera sect hailed was under the thumb of the great cold demon sect, which was why the 7 Stars spirit realm dared not use 9 Nether Road to reach the other worlds. There, the great cold demon sect was sovereign while the ephemera sect was merely a regional sect. No comparison between the two could be made. According to the ghost mother of ephemera's words to Jiang Qiong, the decline of the ephemera sect was influenced by the great cold demon sect. Long ago, that continent did not belong to the great cold demon sect. Following the unification, Juhua sect, like other sects, shared access to the 9 Nether Road, which allowed the ghost mother to return to her roots, with Jiang Qiong bridging connections through her to the great cold demon sect. The ghost mother knew a great cultivator within the great cold demon sect, a great cultivator with only Mahayana realm cultivation, likely a lowly figure within the sect. Although Sword Venerable Fudao has recently protected the continent, how can his soul strength contend with the great cold demon sect? He did not charge me with any tasks, so I deliberately returned to take you to the great cold demon sect. What harm in cultivating medicinal herbs there? By joining the great cold demon sect, that too could be arranged, Jiang Qiong earnestly suggested. Guwen felt moved yet amused. Why did she always flip sides so easily? Guwen shook his head. "No thanks. How comfortable could I be, tending herbs in the powerful great cold demon sect? Perhaps no sooner than joining would I be refined into an elixir. That's a demon sect." Jiang Qiong glared at him, annoyed. "With me around, who could dare to bully you? Are you highly cultivated? Surely not among the highest in the great cold demon sect. But to protect you? More than enough. Just calmly stay with me then." "So I'd have to wait on you? Curry favor with you?" "Exactly, how about that? Right now my feet are a bit sore. Come give me a rub." Spit, shameless. Guwen would never agree. A man might be slain but not insulted. Looking down, his face betraying disgust, he noted that Jiang Qiong's feet, which she had only bared moments ago, were already stained with mud and grass. Jiang Qiong watched Guwen's stubborn reaction, amused and keen to tease further, but she first needed to address serious matters. She spoke gravely, "Guwen, this time it's different. The Great Cold Demon Sect has sent vast numbers of cultivators here, their might unmatched by 7-star Spirit Realm or Star Sea congregations. Even Star Sea congregations contemplates retreat. Not to mention them, do you know about Nine Nether Road? Almost every sect on this continent has members desiring to flee through Nine Nether Road, including your supreme sect." Guwen fell silent. Jiang Qiong continued, "Actually, joining the Great Cold Demon Sect might not be ill-fated. Perhaps you'd even discover great opportunities. While innate aptitude is fated, there are plenty in this world who turn their lives around with later-day fortunes. Don't you desire the pursuit of eternal life?" Guwen gazed at her, replying, "Thanks for your kindness, but I truly don't want to go. There are too many things and people here that I cannot abandon. As for fortunes you mentioned, when has this world ever offered fortune free from danger? Even venturing into the 8 scenic caves once nearly brought me peril." Hearing this, Jiang Qiong grew frustrated. Why was this boy so stubborn? Guwen added, "Moreover, I feel this catastrophe might not be insurmountable. I believe in Sword Venerable Fudao, believe in the triumph of good over evil. Surely, there are many great powers in this world who can stand against the Great Cold Demon Sect. I often read books, and don't they all say, if man will strive, then heaven will thrive? The Great Cold Demon Sect, which treats life so wantonly, no matter how powerful, will eventually meet its reckoning. Aligning with them is not a righteous path." With that, he raised the book in his hand with a determined expression. Chapter 292. The world has changed. Hearing Guwen's words, Jiang Qiong fell into silence. She felt somewhat lost inside. She had always been faced with choices. She had escaped from the Thousand Autumn Pavilion to the Supreme Sect, then from the Supreme Sect to the Nine Nether Road, and even after establishing the Juhua Sect, she still had to flee to the Great Cold Demon Sect. Could it be that all her choices had been wrong? It seemed that no matter when she returned, Guwen never changed. Guwen saw the mood she was in. He was afraid of saying too much. After all, she didn't have the confidence he did. How could he judge everyone by his own standards? "My nature dictates that I cannot travel far and wide. You are much stronger than I am. You can go on adventures, but you must never fully trust anyone, especially the demon sect," Guwen said. Jiang Qiong snapped to attention upon hearing this. What was she thinking? If she hadn't fled, she'd already be dead. Even compared with Guwen, her cultivation level was rising rapidly. Although the path seemed difficult and bitter, her cultivation was her achievement. She was now at the 7th floor of the Divinity Transformation Realm. Thinking of this, Jiang Qiong smiled. She glared at Guwen and said, "You've refused me time and again. Be careful or I might stop caring about you. When you run into trouble and think of me, it will be too late." Guwen solemnly said, "As long as you are safe, it doesn't matter if you forget about me. Meeting and knowing each other in this life is a destiny forged over 100 lifetimes." Touched by his words, Jiang Qiong thought to herself, this brat knows how to talk. If his cultivation were higher, how many girls of heavenly pride would he lead astray? Of course, she believed that Guwen truly thought this way and wasn't just trying to please her. After knowing him for so many years, she never heard Guwen ask her for anything. Jiang Qiong looked at Guwen, wanting to tease him, but no words could pass her throat. That's because this time, the situation was truly different. She felt that Guwen had underestimated the power of the Great Cold Demon Sect. Indeed, in the past few years, when the heavenly fire calamity that covered the skies was blocked by Sword Venerable Fudao, the common beings on the mainland did not see the tragic scenes over the seas, where many creatures died in agony. The one who had acted was only a cultivator from the Great Cold Demon Sect, and now a large group of cultivators from the Great Cold Demon Sect was on their way. Just the thought filled her with despair, seeing no glimmer of hope for victory. Who in the world could stand against the colossal presence of the great cold demon sect like this? Jiang Qiong looked at Guwen's gentle smiling face and suddenly felt a pang of heartache. Silly boy, what is written in books is not necessarily true. Indeed, since ancient times, good has triumphed over evil, but if evil wins, it can become the new good. Jiang Qiong did not immediately leave after returning but stayed within the 8 scenic caves. Guwen would visit her every other day, each time trying various ways to persuade him, whether by tempting him with legends of the great cold demon sect or by teaching him spells. Guwen steadfastly refused, but since he didn't want to confront her directly, they were at a stalemate. Half a month passed. The weather was still scorching hot. As Guwen came down from the loft, he was confronted by Ji Xiaoyu at the foot of the stairs. "Who is that woman?" Ji Xiaoyu asked, staring at Guwen. Her expression was calm, but her eyes seemed rather sharp. Guwen was surprised and asked, "What woman? There's a scent of another woman on you. So what if there is? What about it?" Guwen didn't seem to care, chuckling. After all, in this world, it's the explanations that are suspect. The less you care, the less significant it seems. In fact, nothing had happened between him and Jiang Qiong, but he couldn't betray her by revealing her plan to defect to the great cold demon sect. Guwen hadn't urged Jiang Qiong to give up on joining the great cold demon sect because he wasn't sure of the sect's strength himself. If the great cold demon sect turned out to be powerful enough that even he couldn't deal with it, he'd have to flee too. Ji Xiaoyu looked at Guwen and said, "Haven't you noticed a change in the atmosphere of the mortal world?" Guwen looked around and said, "How has it changed? Those who should be sweeping are sweeping, those who want to play chess are still playing chess. Look, there's even a rat leading an ox." Ji Xiaoyu followed his gaze and couldn't help but shake her head and chuckle. "Never mind, it's just as well. In life, cherishing the present is enough," she said softly before turning back to her room to continue her cultivation. Guwen didn't try to retain her. Instead, he kept his gaze fixed on Medicine Valley. He saw much more than Ji Xiaoyu did, and much clearer too. Ever since the reel by Hong displayed heavenly fire, the entire sea had been engulfed by a frenzy of escape, which gradually affected the mainland. Many noble families began to venture across the seas or rush to the Nine Nether Road. Moreover, many were spreading rumors that the great cold demon sect was about to launch a massive invasion, all of which Guwen knew were minions hastily recruited by the great cold demon sect cultivators, intended to sow panic in this part of the mortal world. At the Say-breaking rift, the soul-calming pagoda was already crammed with countless cultivators from the great cold demon sect, the least of whom were at the Nirvana realm, with the number of heaven and earth flying immortals surpassing 100. Besides the life-seizing immortal, there were even 3 carefree primordial immortals. A total of 4 carefree primordial immortals. This force was absolutely overwhelming in this part of the mortal world, unstoppable. The key was that the great cold demon sect was still sending reinforcements. Guwen hadn't made a move yet because he didn't know the full extent of the great cold demon sect's resources. However, he wasn't just waiting idly. He had already used his divine sense to scan the great heavenly spirit land, looking for a safe place far from this part of the mortal world. If he really couldn't stand against them, he would take everyone he cared about with him and leave, ready to start life anew. Of course, this was a last resort. It all depended on whether the great cold demon sect had a divine immortal of wondrous dharma. So far, the highest level among the carefree primordial immortals was only the 5th floor. Before a divine immortal of wondrous dharma appeared, Guwen, who was at the 9th floor of the divine immortal of wondrous dharma realm, wouldn't panic. After watching for a while, Guwen turned and left. An ancient hour later, riding on the blood prison great saint, he arrived at Tianya Valley with Yang Jian and Li Lingtian following behind. Li Lingtian wore an impatient expression. It was clear he was not keen on coming to Tianya Valley. Li Shendao was waiting inside the valley. Guwen, accompanied by the 2 men, entered the courtyard where Li Shendao was. By now, Li Lingtian's cultivation had reached the 8th floor of the core formation realm, pleasing Li Shendao, who complimented him for not neglecting his cultivation. "Let's get one thing straight. I don't want to go back. Besides, Father Emperor, You're still in good spirits, so there's no need for me to act as the crown prince. Li Lingtian said immediately. Li Xiandao shook his head with a smile, while Guan actually found this quite amusing. Li Xiandao planned to reign as emperor for eternity. Naturally, the crown prince was the most feared threat. The only reason Li Lingtian became the crown prince was on behalf of Empress Yang and the Yang family. Li Lingxian's words made Guan look at him with newfound respect. This youngster seemed to have the wisdom of playing the fool. Li Xiandao became serious. It's not about you returning to the palace, but to your mother's family to sail with them. There's no room for discussion. Your mother has given a strict order. Li Lingtian was taken aback. He instinctively wanted to ask why, but he quickly understood. For a time, the atmosphere in the courtyard fell silent. Li Xiandao turned to Guan and asked, "The Supreme Sect has yet to formulate a strategy. Do you want to join Lingtian in leaving?" The reason the Supreme Sect had no strategy was something Guan had heard from LV Badian. The Hall of Elders had debated multiple times about whether to evacuate, fearing that it might offend Sword Venerable Fudao, who had been willing to protect them. How could they run away now? Sword Venerable Fudao took action not for himself, but to save them, the mortal spirits. LV Badian also consulted Guan, asking his opinion on whether they should evacuate. This time, Guan offered no advice. He wanted the Supreme Sect to make their own decision. If the Supreme Sect chose to flee, he certainly wouldn't follow them but would find a place to hide instead. From then on, his connection with the Supreme Sect would be severed. Guan had no burdens regarding the Supreme Sect. He owed them nothing, quite the contrary. The sect owed him a lot. "I'll pass. Let the Supreme Sect decide." "I can't leave the Supreme Sect," Guan answered. Upon hearing this, Li Lingtian quickly said, "Father Emperor, I can also—" "Shut up!" Li Xiandao barked, his eyes sharply intimidating. For a moment, Li Lingtian felt afraid. Yang Jian and the Blood Prison Great Saint looked at Li Xiandao in shock. Why did this emperor seem no ordinary man? This situation is different from before. If you follow the Supreme Sect to evacuate, chances are you will never see your mother again in this life. You must go back. Li Xiandao took a deep breath and said coldly. His mood had been bad all this time, had merely been suppressing it. He had worked hard for many years to secure his empire, and now a calamity threatened to destroy it. How could he not feel indignant? Yet, compared to the immense depth of the great cold demon sect, Taizong dynasty had no intention to resist. Guan looked at Li Xiandao and asked, "Uncle, what about you?" Li Lingtian turned his gaze angrily to Li Xiandao. Li Xiandao looked at his own teacup on the table and said softly, "Everyone can escape, except me. Even if I have to die, let me die alongside my subjects." With so many people in the Taizong dynasty, not all could escape. If he thought of leaving, the dynasty would surely descend into chaos. Li Lingtian froze, his eyes softening as he looked at Li Xiandao. Yang Jian also grew solemn out of respect for the emperor who had gifted him a divine weapon. The Blood Prison Great Saint hadn't expected Li Xiandao to be so resolute, and he rose from his crouch in surprise. Guan addressed Li Xiandao. "Uncle, have you forgotten the goal you once sought?" Li Xiandao replied, "Without my subjects, what is an emperor's throne worth? An emperor who cannot protect his empire is bound to fail. Even if the empire were to be rebuilt, it would be meaningless." His words inspired admiration in everyone present. Luo Hun even knelt down, expressing with a heavy voice, "Your Highness, I am willing to follow and serve you unto death without regret." Li Xiandao merely waved his hand, not saying much more. Sure, he spoke sincerely, but he hadn't resigned himself to fate. He was gambling. He was betting on the Sword Venerable Fudao to overturn the great cold demon sect. He couldn't forget the shock Sword Venerable Fudao had brought him during past calamities. He couldn't forget that day when the skies were filled with fierce flames pressuring the living beings, and countless green lights rose up, giving him hope. He felt Sword Venerable Fudao was different, a difference that perhaps even transcended cultivation levels. Despite many great cultivators in the world, He just felt that Sword Venerable Fudao was the most special. From Sword Venerable Fudao he sensed an aura. That was the aura of invincibility. Should Sword Venerable Fudao's heart be kind, then peace would reign throughout the land. Chapter 293. How about I slice that continent in half with one sword? After staying in Tianya Valley for an ancient hour, Guan left with Blood Prison Great Saint and Yang Jian, while Li Lingtian stayed behind in Tianya Valley, as he was about to head south and venture out to sea. If nothing unexpected happened, at least in Li Lingtian's view, it would be very difficult for him to see Guan and Yang Jian again in his lifetime. When they parted, Li Lingtian asked Guan to convey a message to Ji Xiaoyu, speaking words of blessings. Master, is there really no power in the world willing to come out and stop the great cold demon sect? Blood Prison Great Saint asked with a tone full of emotion. In his world, there existed no force as formidable. Yang Jian also looked towards Guan, unworried as long as his martial master was calm. Guan responded, "How can there not be?" Many led the charge towards the soul-calming pagoda, only to fall due to lack of strength. He spoke the truth. Every now and then, a group of cultivators and demons would assault the soul-calming pagoda, and even if they perished, others would follow their will. Whether the world was good or evil, it was hard to say, but one thing was certain: there existed real justice, and some cultivators deemed it more important than eternal life. Guan looked into the distance. Great cold demon sect, you'd better have something worth my fear, or even the Holy King can't protect you. What would the Holy Court do if angered? Kill if necessary, or simply flee to outer heaven? If no trouble came knocking, Guan naturally preferred to stay low in the supreme sect. But when trouble came knocking uninvited, he wouldn't swallow his pride. Along the way, having killed numerous madmen, Guan was always aware of how terrifying his ability to seize life was. In anyone else's hands, it would have caused catastrophe across the world. He managed restraint because that was who he was. Everyone had their path, and he only wished to walk his without guilt. However, the more chaotic the world became, the more he desired to unleash slaughter. He wanted to kill the people of the great cold demon sect. Across the tumultuous seas lay the sea-breaking rift, splitting the ocean in two, beside which stood the towering soul-calming pagoda, its top seeming to touch the sky. The sky brimmed with stifling thunderclouds, with occasional muffled thunder. At the first level of the soul-calming pagoda, the life-seizing immortal sat on a lotus throne, flanked by 3 individuals, none inferior in presence, while hundreds of great cold demon sect cultivators stood in the hall, creating a cheerful ambience with laughter, looking nothing like demon cultivators, adorned in splendid garments and dignified demeanors, some even appearing ethereal and wise. A woman in red next to the life-seizing immortal opened her eyes, turned to him and asked, "Brother, how much longer must we wait? Are there still beings in this mortal region that the 4 of us cannot subdue?" The other 2 carefree primordial immortals opened their eyes, their expressions indifferent, eyes fixed on the life-seizing immortal. Life-seizing immortal slowly opened his eyes, saying, "Caution is the parent of safety. Bai Hong's death was too peculiar. We must not be careless. Remember what this land hides." The 3 carefree primordial immortals fell silent. Having lived for hundreds of thousands of years and weathered many storms, they shed their arrogance upon hearing life-seizing immortals' words. Indeed, the greater the power, the greater the caution required. At this moment, someone in the hall stepped forward and loudly said, "Venerable masters, why not ignite another disaster to test the limits of that mysterious being and drive more people away, lest they hinder us?" With these words, the hall erupted with agreement and cries for revenge for Bai Hong. Life-seizing immortal's gaze turned to the first speaker, a blue-robed Taoist with a treasure sword at his waist and a folding fan in hand, his inherent sword intent formidable even just standing there. "Qing Xin, what would you like to do?" asked the life-seizing immortal. Silence followed in the hall. With a smirk, Qing Xin the Taoist replied, "I wield a sword capable of slicing oceans and moons alike. How about I cleave that continent in half with a single strike?" After speaking, He raised his arms, turned to face the crowd, prompting applause and cheers in the hall. The majority of cultivators present felt no pressure but rather a playful curiosity to see who would dare oppose the great cold demon sect. Were it another mortal region, they might have worried, but here, like tigers among chickens, where was the reason to fear? Watching Qingxin display such vigor, the other three carefree primordial immortals smiled, having watched him grow up and master Taoist sorcery. Now capable of standing on his own, they were naturally pleased. After a moment's hesitation, life-seizing immortal slowly nodded. Seeing this, Qingxin's smile grew larger, declaring, "In that case, I will go now. Fellow disciples, come and enjoy the spectacle with me." The life-seizing immortal added, "Do not stray far. Master, rest assured." Qingxin saluted with his hands, turned, and left, followed by a throng. The woman in red turned to the life-seizing immortal, saying, "Now's a good time for you to speak up and accelerate the process. After all, delay could lead to problems." Life-seizing immortal hesitated again, then slowly nodded. In Supreme Sect, within a bright hall, all elders gathered, including Lu Lingjun and Nine-Finger Divine Lord, most frowning in concern. LV Badian, sitting in the sect leader's seat and flanked by 5 supreme elders, appeared equally at a loss. Vice Sect Leader Ji Hantian spoke out. "Sect Leader, just say what you're thinking, so we can prepare in advance. We can't possibly wait until a catastrophe is upon us to start considering our response." At this, other elders also spoke up, urging LV Badian. LV Badian took a deep breath and said, "I fear that once we retreat, our connection with Sword Venerable Fudao will be irreversibly severed." A few agreed with him. An elder stood up and argued, "Survival is the most important thing. So far, none of us have even seen Sword Venerable Fudao, let alone understand his views on the matter. Moreover, we simply cannot compare ourselves to Sword Venerable Fudao. If he wants to flee, he can. His Dao level is beyond ours." This sentiment was echoed by others, considering not only themselves but also their disciples and descendants, each backed by influential families or intricate networks. The current Supreme Sect comprised millions of disciples, and the number scattered across various places was immeasurable. Gu Zong also sighed, unusually not supporting LV Badian this time. Lu Lingjun also wished for the Supreme Sect to evacuate. Her reluctance to leave Supreme Sect stemmed from concern for the people of the Third Medicine Valley, hoping they wouldn't perish in this impending catastrophe. LV Badian's expression turned extremely grim as he took another deep breath and declared, "If so, those who want to leave may do so. However, Supreme Sect must remain on this continent, empty or not. This is our stance. Without Sword Venerable Fudao, there would be no Supreme Sect today." As he spoke these words, he relaxed. A smile appeared on his face, the decision lifting the burden from his shoulders. It would be death at worst. His statement caused an uproar in the hall. "Sect leader, think again. If it really comes to it, why not ask the elder in front of the heaven-cutting axe for advice? You can't make such arbitrary decisions. Yes, what does it mean to say the sect can be empty but not leave? Where does that leave our dignity? The sect is a whole. We must advance or retreat together. Sect leader, let's leave together. We can ask Sword Venerable Fudao to join us." LV Badian, listening to their words, felt their hypocrisy. A bunch of cowards afraid to take responsibility and scared to die. As he was about to speak, a voice suddenly echoed through the heavens and earth. "From today, my disciple, Qingxin the Taoist, will annihilate one region each day. Worldly beings, your time is running out. Today, let's see which region's creatures are most pitiable, unfortunate enough to be the first annihilated." As the life-seizing immortal's voice faded, a chill ran through everyone in the hall. They were not frightened by his words, but felt a terrifying sword intent targeting them. More precisely, every sentient being on the continent was terrified by this sword intent. Chapter 294. Deadline of Death inside the Third Medicine Valley. Guin and an Exian stood in a garden area, with Gu-en instructing what to plant next. And Xian listened attentively. Just then, the voice of the life-seizing immortal suddenly echoed. He was actually planning to exterminate one region of heaven and earth every day. And Xian had no time to think further when a terrifying sword intent descended, causing a drastic change in her complexion. The previously bustling Medicine Valley fell silent in an instant, and Xian felt as if she were being crushed by a mountain, almost unable to breathe, which turned her complexion even paler. Suddenly, a hand landed on her shoulder, making her heart tremble. Before she could think further, the pressure on her body abruptly vanished. She turned her head instinctively and, seeing it was her master's hand, she breathed a sigh of relief. "Master, could it be that they've chosen the continent we're on?" And Xian asked cautiously. Even though she was carefree on normal days, she feared death when faced with it. The words of the life-seizing immortal, coupled with the sudden sword intent, made it clear that the first chosen continent was the one they were on. Gu-en took a deep breath and feigned composure. "Unclear. Let's go back inside first. Within the confines of the supreme sect, such calamities are not our concern. Whether we live or die, we leave it to fate." And Xian wanted to speak again, but Gu-en pulled her away. Another voice rang out in Medicine Valley. "Amit-ba!" With Shinzin's words, everyone in Medicine Valley felt relieved, and disciples ran towards the pavilions. Rumble. The earth trembled as the supreme sect activated its great protective formation. Golden barriers rose up from all directions. By the time Gu-en and his companion reached the pavilion, Ji Xiaoyu had already stepped outside. She gazed at the sky, the red Tao patterns on her forehead starting to flicker with tiny flames. Seeing this, Gu-en quickly approached her and asked, "You weren't frightened just now, were you?" Ji Xiaoyu's Tao patterns returned to normal as Gu-en blocked her view. Her expression calmed down and she nodded. "No, it seems the life-seizing immortal is targeting the continent. It's probably related to the actions of Sword Venerable Fudao years ago." Gu-en comforted her. "Don't overthink it. If the enemy is acting this way, it means Sword Venerable Fudao is still around. Take care of the valley for me. I need to make a trip to Mystic Valley." With that, Gu-en quickly headed towards the transmission array platform. Ji Xiaoyu looked at his receding figure, wanting to say something, but she couldn't find the words. Somehow, this scene felt familiar, as if she had seen it somewhere. Gu-en swiftly arrived in Mystic Valley and saw Lu Jujia already calling disciples to take cover. He nodded to himself in approval. Taking advantage of the moment when no one was paying attention, he quickly walked into the woods pretending to inspect medicinal herbs. "Are you courting death? Caring about your flowers and plants at a time like this? You must be insane." The voice of Jiang Qiong came from behind, and Gu-en turned to look, seeing her with an ugly expression walking towards him. She looked at Gu-en and said with resentment, "Now I can't even escape if I want to. Let's wait for death together." She could feel the sword intent approaching rapidly. Even if she tried to escape now, she was afraid it would be too late to reach the Nine Nether Road. Gu-en, squatting on the ground, couldn't help but punch the grass, picking up a handful of fallen leaves before standing up, his face filled with unwillingness. Jiang Qiong looked at his expression and suddenly laughed, teasing, "What's wrong? Scared?" Gu-en tossed the leaves in his hand forward as if venting his anger. He then turned to look at Jiang Qiong and said, "I'm not afraid. I just find this disdain for life detestable." Jiang Qiong fell silent, then said, "Come with me to the 8 scenic caves." Gu-en nodded and followed her up the mountain. Jiang Qiong didn't notice the leaves that Gu-en had thrown floated up again, each leaf trembling. Only after they entered the entrance of the 8 scenic caves did the leaves disappear into the forest. In front of the soul-calming pagoda, tens of thousands of great cold demon sect cultivators floated in the air, their eyes focused on Qingxin Zhenren, who was holding a sword. Such exquisite sword intent, Elder Brother Kingxin's supreme mysterious sword Tao, has reached the transformation realm. Indeed powerful, enough to sweep across the heaven and earth flying immortal realm. I heard that elder brother Bai Hong was defeated by elder brother Qingxin 1,000 years ago. The founder of the supreme mysterious sword Dao, the supreme mysterious ancestor, went to the Holy Land long ago. In 10,000 years, the only one who has reached such a level with the supreme mysterious sword Dao is elder Qingxin. This sword strike, everyone should watch carefully. It is a rare sight. The great cultivators of the great cold demon sect discussed animatedly, mostly in a light-hearted tone. Even though they already knew about the fall of Bai Hong, they were not panicked. They had the numerical advantage this time, and with 4 carefree primordial immortals as their support, how could they possibly die? Qingxin Zhenren positioned his treasure sword in front of him, the blade perfectly aligning with his eyes. Suddenly, he opened his eyes, which astonishingly turned green. As soon as he opened his eyes, his sword intent fully erupted, silencing the surrounding noise. All eyes fell on Qingxin Zhenren, and with a stern look, he immediately slashed with his sword. Sword light gleamed, chilling the heaven and sea, and even the rolling thunderclouds above were illuminated. As Qingxin Zhenren swung his sword intent transformed into terrifying sword chi, shooting forward as his pupils suddenly contracted. In the reflection of his pupils, numerous green dots grew rapidly. From the onlooker's perspective, Qingxin Zhenren's sword slashed out a terrifying sword chi tens of thousands of miles long, like a crescent moon sweeping across the sky. At that moment, a series of green light beams shot from the edge of the sky with even greater speed, too fast for anyone to react. Boom! The sword chi scattered, and Qingxin Zhenren's eyes widened in disbelief as a green light reached him in a blink of an eye. As if time stood still, he saw a falling leaf amidst the green light. The leaf, carrying terrifying sword chi, directly shattered Qingxin Zhenren's physical body and extinguished his soul. It wasn't just one leaf. Dozens more did the same, annihilating great cultivators of the great cold demon sect, the soul-calming pagoda trembling violently. The life-seizing immortal and his 4 carefree primordial immortal companions appeared out of thin air, casting spells swiftly to form a vast barrier, protecting all the disciples around them. Silence! The world rapidly fell into quietness, and all the disciples of the great cold demon sect trembled, displaying fear no longer masked by their previous nonchalant demeanor. The life-seizing immortal turned his head, noticing the leaves embedded all over the surface of the soul-calming pagoda, his pupils narrowing. It was leaves. The attack was too fast, so fast that by the time they realized it, more than a dozen disciples had died, all heaven and earth flying immortals. Even the red-clothed woman who had been urging the life-seizing immortal to speed up the process couldn't speak now. As powerful as the carefree primordial immortals were, they were filled with dread. The enemy had struck too fast, killing disciples right under their noses. It was as if someone had slapped them across the face, leaving a burning sensation. Guan followed Jiang Qiong into the 8 scenic caves, with prompts of lifespan continuously appearing before him. This strike seized 4,300,000 years of lifespan. Guan hadn't used his full strength, but it was enough to terrify the life-seizing immortal and his associates. If they could summon even stronger beings, then they should call them sooner. If not, even if they gave up on exterminating this region of the mortal world, Guan would not let them go. The 100-year mandate set by the life-seizing immortal had already become his death sentence in Guan's mind. Jiang Qiong let out a sound of surprise, feeling the terrifying sword intent suddenly disappear. Guan then asked, "Could it be that we've escaped this disaster?" Without looking back, Jiang Qiong replied, "Can't say for sure." The two made their way to the green vine tree, with Jiang Qiong starting to set up the formation. Guan asked her what she was doing. The smaller the range of the formation, the stronger its protection. I want to see if we can escape this disaster. Let's take a gamble. If it doesn't work, we're dead anyway. So worrying then would be pointless. Jiang Qiong casually answered, making Guan want to cry and laugh at the same time. Meanwhile, the entire continent was in a state of tension. Even though the sword intent had vanished, the tightly wound nerves of all beings on the continent could not immediately relax. Many beings began to flee, and Guan even felt many presences flying out of the supreme sect, all in groups, which were noble families in flight. Inside the third Medicine Valley, Ji Hantian landed swiftly and found Ji Xiaoyu. The two conversed inside the house. "I'm not leaving," Ji Xiaoyu stated, expressionless. Upon hearing this, Ji Hantian became angry, but, for some reason, looking at Ji Xiaoyu, he thought of a fellow descendant with the same name and surname. Although they looked different, their expressions at this moment made them seem like the same person. Ji Hantian's anger dissipated somewhat, and he said solemnly, "Regardless of whether the life-seizing immortal has chosen this continent, there will only be more dangers ahead. The Ji family must preserve its lineage. Why do you insist on staying?" Ji Xiaoyu looked at him. "Someone must stay. I can give my spot to someone else. Besides, where can we flee to?" Ji Hantian felt suffocated with frustration. Years ago, he had tried to forcibly keep another Ji Xiaoyu, without success. Now he wanted this Ji Xiaoyu to leave, but it was still not possible. He couldn't understand why these descendants always opposed him. He was always looking out for their best interest. "There's no time left. You'd better go and persuade the other clan members," Ji Xiaoyu reminded. Ji Hantian glared at her and left immediately. Ji Xiaoyu was not his direct descendant, so he could only advise, without the right to forcibly take her away. Once Ji Hantian had departed, Ji Xiaoyu thought for a moment and then walked out of her house. She went outside the courtyard, looking up at the sky, only to see numerous cultivators flying over Medicine Valley. It was unclear whether they were fleeing or preparing for battle. "The great cold demon sect," Ji Xiaoyu murmured to herself, the Tao patterns between her eyebrows once more emitting thin flames. Time passed amidst the panic of beings below. The people were trapped in agony and anxiety. Until an ancient hour later, the atmosphere began to ease. Elder Lu looked at Shinxinzi and asked, "Senior, were we not chosen?" The other disciples looked at Shinxinzi as well. Shun Zinzi's background was very mysterious, but the higher-ups of the Supreme Sect held him in high regard. Such an existence would certainly see further than they could. Shinxinzi frowned deeply, looking towards the sky, and said, "Indeed, we were not chosen." At his words, all the disciples rejoiced. Chapter 295. The Great Cold Demon Sect Attacks. Upon hearing Shun Zinzi's words, the disciples of Medicine Valley all cheered. Yet Shun Xinzi hesitated as if he wanted to say more. He intended to say one thing, that it seemed no continent had been chosen. To obliterate a continent, what immense power it must require. He, being from the 9th layer of the wandering immortal realm, could surely sense it. However, he could not openly mention this, for fear that these mortals would be terrified. Even if they knew what would happen next, what could they do? Better to enjoy the surprise and live the remaining days as carefree as possible. Time continued to pass. With the moon setting and the sun rising, only when the next day's sunlight swept across the great heaven and earth did the creatures of the continent finally breathe a sigh of relief, for the life-seizing immortal had said that each day, one continent would be chosen, and they had survived the first day. The situation at the Supreme Sect also settled down. Although many noble families began to retreat, the core foundation remained unshaken. When Guan returned to the third Medicine Valley, normalcy had returned to Medicine Valley. After Xiaochuan left and an ex-Xian began to manage Medicine Valley, and because of her gentle nature, most disciples liked her, so there had been no issues under her management. Shenzhen found him soon after he returned. "Do you want a place to hide?" Shenzhen asked with a smug smile, her eyes gleaming behind her veil. While walking toward a distant garden, Guan casually asked, "How would we hide?" Following his steps, Shenzhen explained, "I can hide you inside a painting or scroll, and then keep it hidden. Wouldn't that be a refuge? People are trying to obliterate continents. Where could you hide? Underground, of course." He said he would obliterate continents, sure he meant to demolish the mortals and shatter the land, not obliterate the earth completely. "That makes sense. Are you a genius by any chance?" Guan suddenly realized, looking at Shenzhen with amazed eyes. A twitch appeared at the corner of Xinjian's veiled mouth, clearly perceiving the sarcasm in Guwen's tone. Guwen continued, "Don't overthink it. I always feel that yesterday our continent was not excluded. That mysterious pressure was no lie. Also, haven't you noticed how calm today has been?" Upon hearing this, Shunjun narrowed her eyes. "Are you suggesting that the great cold demon sect's offensive was thwarted?" "Very likely. After all, I trust that the heavens are just. There must be great cultivators out there with a heart for the mortals. A heretical path like the great cold demon sect cannot last forever," Guwen declared with conviction, his face full of determination. Xinjun suddenly found it hard to judge him. Calling him foolish wouldn't explain his current stature, and calling him naive wouldn't explain how he could write something as unique as Journey to the West. "You say the heavens are just. Tell me, do you believe that real immortals exist, beyond those with great cultivation levels?" Xinjun suddenly asked, curious. She had always believed that investiture of the gods and Journey to the West were not fabricated but were inspired by something Guwen had seen, elaborated with decorative imagination and fantasy. Perhaps, as Guwen claimed, an immortal guided him in his dreams. Guwen and Xinjun chatted casually, a microcosm of the wider world, where everywhere people discussed the life-seizing immortal. Without his demise, the catastrophe would not end. 2 days later, Nine-Fingered Divine Lord and Stealing the 5 Elements returned to the Third Medicine Valley, almost as if they had planned it. Sitting before a chessboard, they exchanged a look, their eyes heavy with gravity. "Did you feel it too?" Stealing the 5 Elements asked. The Divine Lord made his move, saying, "A net of heaven and earth. No escape." Stealing the 5 Elements then played his piece. "How come you have no escape?" "I'm the one who's bound by fate." Continuing to glance towards a distant pavilion. Ji Xiaoyu was his hope. The Divine Lord fell silent, sighing deeply. Stealing the 5 Elements looked at him, curiously asking, "Speaking of which, I've always wondered, what exactly are you looking for?" The Divine Lord didn't respond, leaving Stealing the 5 Elements contemplative, a subtle look crossing his face. In the divine exotic realm. By the sea, the master of divine exotic realm stood before the divine exotic life tablet, surrounded by 7 divine exotic ghost kings, all of them looking up into the sky. Beneath the blood-red sky hung a swirling horsetail whisk. Compared to the calm demeanor of the master of divine exotic realm, the other divine exotic ghost kings looked uneasy, knowing whom they faced. "Master of divine exotic realm, prepare to join us in an expedition." A cold voice resounded, echoing through the entire great heaven and earth. In a distant cave, Zhang Buku also heard this voice and inadvertently opened his eyes, his brow furrowed in worry for the master of divine exotic realm. With an expressionless face, the master of divine exotic realm asked, "An expedition to where?" "To avenge divine exotic impermanence." The cold voice spoke again, causing the faces of the divine exotic ghost kings and the realm master to shift. The great cold demon sect and that entity were indeed going to clash. This battle might determine the fate of this mortal world region. In the Star Sea congregations, a small heaven and earth, and Hao stood before the palace gates, observing disciples constantly entering and exiting the floating islands, his brows deeply furrowed. A figure appeared beside him, his master, Sage Fuchin. And Hao quickly said, "Master, it's good you're here. I need to speak with you. Let's talk while on the way. Prepare for retreat. We must withdraw today." Sage Fuchin said in a grave tone. "Why?" And Hao couldn't help but ask. "The great cold demon sect is making a major descent, targeting the continent where the sword venerable Fudao resides. They appear to be intent on sieging your master," Sage Fuchin explained. On hearing this, and Hao became anxious. Before he could reply, Sage Fuchin continued, "Your cultivation level won't assist your master. It's best to leave early. Your master, although strong, can't withstand the full assault of the great cold demon sect. Otherwise, he wouldn't be on the defensive." And Hao gritted his teeth. "My concern isn't for my master. I must go back." and Exion was still within the supreme sect. How could he abandon her? He immediately leaped up, intending to forcefully break out of the Star Sea congregation's realm. Suddenly, long hair wrapped around him, surprisingly Sage Fukin's horsetail whisk. "Master!" and Hao cried out in anguish, startling the other disciples. Sage Fuchin held the horsetail whisk, chanting incantations. The whisk's hairs quickly extended, gagging and Hao. "I'm sorry, disciple." Sage Fukin's eyes became resolute. This scene left the other disciples silent. Without discussion, they all understood and felt the heaviness in their hearts, likewise having people they couldn't leave behind. The Star Sea congregations were about to flee. In another realm, Leah, leveraging divine exotic city, forcefully broke free, unobstructed by anyone. He quickly flew out over the Star Sea, heading towards the horizon. "Disciple, think carefully. Once you go, there is no turning back." An old voice sounded, and as Leah turned his head, he didn't see his master's figure. He did not answer but instructed the divine exotic immortal spirit on his shoulder to move forward. The divine exotic immortal spirit howled, and the divine exotic city immediately displayed extraordinary speed, streaking towards the horizon. After flying for a while and seeing no one pursued, Leah relaxed, his gaze hardened. "Junior brother Gu, wait for me." And the old ancestor, "I wonder if you're still thinking of me." Leah thought silently, his face heavy. Initially, his emotions weren't profoundly impacted, fueled only by fury as Zhang Buku became a divine exotic resentful ghost. However, the moment the Star Sea congregations announced their departure, he panicked. The Star Sea congregations were a major force at sea. If there was any chance of victory, they wouldn't be abandoning their domain. Hearing that the Great Cold Demon sect aimed to target the Sword Venerable Fudao, he couldn't contain himself. The Sword Venerable Fudao was his primordial ancestor. He was less worried about him, as the ancestor could escape if he couldn't fight, but he feared for the others who might not escape. He had to be quick. Leah clenched his teeth, fearing the continent had already fallen. The divine exotic immortal spirit, however, was not panicked, leaping joyfully in the air, which both irritated and envied Leah. This creature seemed to fear nothing. Its confidence was unknown. Time rapidly passed. 2 ancient hours later, Leah, sitting atop the tower meditating, suddenly sensed something, opening his eyes to find the divine exotic city enveloped in darkness. Instinctively, he looked up, then his eyes widened in disbelief. How possible?" Leah murmured to himself, his voice trembling, his eyes full of despair. In the third medicine valley, at the garden fence, Guwen was stretching his muscles. Passing by, Yu Yingying curiously asked, "What are you doing? Isn't there exercise in the morning?" Guwen replied, "Just felt like moving. Is that not allowed?" What followed was sure to be a great battle. It must be said, the Great Cold Demon sect was indeed frightening. The dense auras attacking from all directions were overwhelmingly oppressive, and once they arrived, if seen by the denizens of the continent, it would surely cause legs to tremble. Yu Yingying looked at him, unable to resist asking, "Everyone is worried about the calamity. Why aren't you afraid?" "Because I'm not afraid, so I'm not frightened," Guwen responded casually, his words leading Yu Yingying to glare, feeling the urge to punch him. She couldn't understand Guwen at all. Out for experience, he feared death, yet, with calamity impending, he seemed not to fear it. Truly a baffling person. Yet, somehow, the more anxious she felt, the more she wanted to talk to Guwen. Perhaps it was his fearless demeanor. Guwen guessed her thoughts and smiled. "Whether you worry or fear, it won't change anything, will it?" Yu Yingying opened her mouth, unsure how to respond. Guwen drew his heavenly residence sword, suddenly unsheathing it. The sword's light gleamed in Yu Yingying's face, snapping her out of her trance. Looking at Gu and holding the sword, Yu Yingying's earlier illusion re-emerged, his forehead marked with golden patterns, appearing extraordinary as if an immortal lord on earth. She had to admit, although Guwen's cultivation level wasn't impressive, His appearance and bearing were truly out of this world, unlike a mortal. Guwen raised his sword towards Yu Yingying, the blade's tip reflecting in her pupils, causing her to shiver. If only this sword could slash away the fear in your hearts. How wonderful would that be? Guwen said wistfully. Yu Yingying was left in a daze. Chapter 296. The Strongest Sword. Sunlight shone on Guwen, and Yu Yingying felt as if he were draped in a layer of rosy clouds, his whole being radiating with splendor. She actually believed that Guwen was speaking the truth. Guwen's gaze fell on her, and he raised an eyebrow asking, "What? Are you intimidated by my aura of righteousness?" Yu Yingying snapped back to reality and glared. "Who can't say things like that? If your sword is really that powerful, would you still be holed up here?" "Heh, what do you know? Hurry up and leave. Don't disturb my cultivation." Guwen smiled, then sheathed his sword smoothly, believing himself to look quite dashing. Sadly, Yu Yingying was blind to it. Yu Yingying snorted and turned to leave. As she turned around, a smile appeared on her face. Talking with this silly boy had indeed had an effect. Her heart felt much better. At the same moment, under the tree, Shinshinzi opened his eyes, his gaze profound. His hand clutching the prayer beads moved faster, clearly anxious. Next to him, Wuxia and Nine-Finger Divine Lord, who were playing chess, stood up. "Let's call this game a draw," declared Nine-Finger Divine Lord without room for doubt. Wuxia's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're almost wiped out by me, and you dare call it a draw?" Nine-Finger Divine Lord said nonchalantly with a straight face and unwavering confidence. "The outcome is uncertain until the end." Wuxia shook his head with a smile but said nothing more, disappearing into thin air. Nine-Finger Divine Lord's gaze swept over Medicine Valley, landing on the distant figure of Gu, and what a pity. "I haven't won a single game against you yet." Nine-Finger Divine Lord muttered to himself before he, too, disappeared on the spot. Guwen, who was stretching his limbs, felt numerous cultivators and demons taking flight across the continent, rushing towards its edges. Before the cataclysm, some wished to flee while others wished to fight. Those wishing to fight were driven by courage, righteousness, or compulsion, but at this moment, they had all made their decision. The question was whether they could maintain that courage once they witnessed the true might of the great cold demon sect. Guwen turned and walked toward the transmission array platform. Along the way, the number of disciples who greeted him diminished, everyone preoccupied with their thoughts. After reaching Mystic Valley, Guwen made his way toward the outskirts of Medicine Valley. Entering the woods, he drew out the Heavenly Residence sword in one hand, while unsheathing the Qinghong sword with the other. The Qinghong sword buzzed faintly as Guwen used his own mana to sever its connection with the White Spirit sword. He could sense his junior sister's unease. "Do not fear, junior sister. It will soon pass," Guwen murmured to himself, and as his words dropped, he was shrouded in a dark purple demonic chi that quickly engulfed his body, blazing furiously. His figure vanished into the depths of the forest, leaving no trace behind. At the edge of the continent, towering waves crashed against the shore. Above the mountains, great cultivators hovered in the air, with the vast landscape behind them and the endless ocean ahead. They hailed from different sects: Supreme Sect, Three Pure Ones Mountain, Sangtian Sect, Daotian Sect, Sword Sect, Candle Sky Peak, Flame Sect, Juhua Sect, and more. Sects across the world continuously dispatched cultivators to different edges of the continent. They were just one group gathering rapidly beyond 100, with more cultivators on their way. As their numbers grew, a newfound confidence began to swell inside them. Xiao Dai, a cultivator from Supreme Sect with a cultivation level of the 9th layer of the Mahayana realm, became the leader, calming the surrounding cultivators and beginning to give battle instructions. Just then, an overwhelmingly terrifying pressure descended, prompting them to turn their heads in shock. In the next second, their faces paled, and even the ever-confident Xiao Dai gaped in despair. A vast black fog rolled in from the horizon like a wave of darkness, unstoppable and devouring the skies and earth. Before the black fog, islands and demon beasts appeared insignificantly small, like dust. Even flying beasts were engulfed by the fog from behind, their fates uncertain. Looking up, shadows of different figures hovered above the black fog, clothed distinctly, wielding different Dharma treasures. Some had glowing artifacts floating behind them, some rode fierce mounts, and others stood proudly atop sword chi with their hands behind their backs. Each one was shadowed by a towering phantom 1,000 feet high, appearing like demon gods, their silhouettes a mirror of themselves. At first glance, there were endless towering demon phantoms of 1,000 feet high that could not be counted, creating an overwhelming sense of oppression. At this moment, the continent cultivators were plunged into dead silence, everyone stunned as if struck by lightning, frozen in midair. Xiao Dai saw behind these 1,000-foot demon phantoms an even more terrifying presence. With legs walking forward, the phantoms unable to reach even the ankles of this mysterious existence. It was impossible to imagine the true size. Some tried to look sideways. Wherever the ocean spread, there stood demon phantoms, casting them into despair not only by the disparity in cultivation levels, but also the sheer numerical difference between friends and foes. "How can we win?" someone said with a bitter laugh. No one responded. Their courage faltered. Above the clouds, Nine-Finger Divine Lord and Wuxia stood shoulder to shoulder, witnessing the entire continent surrounded by the great cold demon sect cultivators from all directions. There are so many. Even the divine exotic realm is here. Wuxia clicked his tongue, sensing that the number of demon sect cultivators was no less than the divine exotic resentful ghosts. Most importantly, these demon cultivators' combined aura was astonishing, with many individual auras strong enough to make him wary. Nine-Finger Divine Lord took a deep breath and scanned the continent as if searching for something. With such commotion, could the Saint World Holy King truly have reincarnated in this land? Wuxia couldn't help but ask. Nine-Finger Divine Lord looked into the distance and replied, "If the Holy Heart awakens, with the Holy King's capabilities, rising to power won't be difficult. But the great cold demon sect fears that the Holy Court might detect the aura of the Saint World Holy King." After hearing this, Wuxia found it to make sense, and he stepped forward. "What are you planning to do?" inquired Nine-Finger Divine Lord hastily. Without turning back, Wuxia strode forward through the air, raising his hand with a laugh. "Forgot to tell you, I am the divine exotic ghost king Wuxia. Wuxia is just a pseudonym." Nine-Finger Divine Lord frowned but didn't get angry, just watched as Wuxia advanced. "Wuxia, return to your place at once." The voice of the master of divine exotic realm rang out, loud and clear. Wuxia accelerated immediately, but suddenly, his face darkened. He looked up only to see an immensely large hand reaching out from behind the demon army, covering the sky and aiming to seize him. The size of this hand was beyond what words could describe. Wuxia was horrified to discover that he was frozen in place. "This is bad." Despair filled Wuxia's eyes. At that moment, a powerful sword light forcefully entered his field of vision, and immediately after, the terrifying giant hand disintegrated before him. Subconsciously glancing over, his eyes widened in shock. He saw a figure he would never forget for all eternity. It was Guan, who had utilized the 9 extremes yin-yang body back in the divine exotic realm. Guan, holding 2 swords covered in dark purple demonic chi, brushed past Wuxia. As his words hung in the air, Guan turned into a fleeting shadow, and in a flash, a streak of sword light appeared, boldly piercing through the distant black fog. Before Wuxia could react, a terrifying wave of energy struck. His mouth agape, he looked on in disbelief. As he watched, a streak of sword chi burst from within the demon army, cutting a swath through the 1,000-foot demon phantoms at the waist. The light of the sword chi stripped the entire world of color in an instant. The continent cultivators were dazzled into closing their eyes, the mortal spirits unable to glimpse this sword light. Above the clouds, Nine-Finger Divine Lord's face also transformed, his soul shaken by the impact. In his eyes, the demon phantoms perished, the black fog churned, and a sword light rapidly stretched, as if intent on splitting the very heavens and earth in two. In that moment, Nine-Finger Divine Lord, who had lived for 170,000 years, witnessed the strongest sword strike of his life. "Who are you?" A voice full of both shock and rage erupted, the tone laced with fear. Chapter 297. Guwen takes action. The sword light between heaven and earth began to fade, and the voice of the mysterious great cultivator from the great cold demon sect still echoed over the ocean, awakening the continent cultivators who had not seen Guwen's figure just now. Only Nine-Finger Divine Lord and stealing the 5 elements had seen clearly. But the immense sword intent made them think of one person. Sword Venerable Fudao. It's Sword Venerable Fudao. There's no mistake. It must be him. A mystic heart realm cultivator from the Supreme Sect exclaimed excitedly. He had also been to the heavenly repair platform and had experienced the sword intent within the words righteous path. Xiao Dai was equally excited, his eyes filled with frenzied anticipation. At this moment, he remembered the scene when Sword Venerable Fudao descended upon the 7-star spirit realm. Stealing the 5 elements, who had narrowly escaped calamity, let out a sigh of relief, immediately retreated, and dared not approach the encroaching army of demonic shadows again. Guwen stood atop the demon mist, sword in hand, with thousand-zhong demonic shadows dissipating in all directions, but even more demonic shadows approached, encircling him. He even saw some demonic shadows standing tens of thousands of zhong tall and giant demons of indeterminate size. You have successfully seized 10,298 years of lifespan from Meng Chenglang, wandering Immortal Realm's 7th floor. You have successfully seized 1,459 years of lifespan from Su Linxin, Loose Immortal Realm's 2nd floor. You have successfully seized 12,080 years of lifespan from True Man Wuyun, wandering Immortal Realm's 6th floor. Notification after notification continuously popped up before Guwen's eyes, but Guwen didn't rush to make another move. Instead, he looked around. One had to say the great cold demon sect's response was truly swift. As soon as he made a move, the remaining cultivators did not panic but instead immediately arranged a formation. Their formation was highly profound, not only capable of being formed in an extremely short amount of time but also containing powerful and mysterious forces. After the sword light vanished, in less than 3 breaths' time, the world suddenly changed, and in an instant, Guwen found himself in the cosmic star's cape, with rolling black mist under his feet, and still encircled by demonic shadows. The demonic shadows' feet held the Dharma treasures of the great cold demon sect cultivators. Accompanied by Guwen's arrival in the cosmic star's cape, those titanic figures and even larger beings revealed their true forms. There were beasts as mighty as creation's god mountains, female cultivators who resembled fairies constantly scattering strange petals, and enormous birds with wingspans of 10,000 li circling overhead. The demon mist under Guwen's feet churned violently, like surging waves. Who are you exactly? If you do not reveal your identity, do not blame us for showing no mercy. The previous voice sounded again. This time its tone was incomparably cold. After the formation was set up, he seemed to have regained his confidence. Guwen looked up and saw, within the layers of encirclement above, in absolute darkness, a pair of gigantic eyes lurked, as if an unimaginable existence outside the universe was peering at him, filled with an oppressive feeling. Sword Venerable Jesuin, Carefree Primordial Immortal Realm 8th Floor 780, 450/830, 000/880, 000, an old monster who had lived for 780,000 years. However, killing this individual would only yield a little over 5,000 years of lifespan, which was too disappointing for Guwen. As Sword Venerable Jesuin opened his eyes, for life-seizing immortals from the Carefree Primordial Immortal concurrently appeared. Fortunately, they had abundant lifespan, which improved Guwen's mood. This is the great cold demon sect's Luotian star's immortal capturing formation. Once this formation is completed, No matter how great your divine skills, it will be impossible for you to escape. The voice of Sword Venerable Jesuin rang out, majestic to the extreme. The other 4 carefree primordial immortals took out their supreme treasures and dispersed in all directions. Once they stopped, the entire cosmic stars cape rippled, numerous rainbow lights emerged. These lights were not mere illusions, but were also condensing a mysterious force. Guin looked up at Sword Venerable Jesuin and asked, "Does the Great Cold Demon Sect have anyone stronger?" As these words were spoken, Sword Venerable Jesuin's gaze immediately changed, and all the cultivators of the Great Cold Demon Sect were scared. Their eyes filled with fear when they looked at him. Someone stronger? How could this person be so arrogant? However, due to Guin's previous sword strike, no one dared to challenge him at this moment. All of them were on high alert. The face of life-seizing immortal turned extremely ugly, intuition telling him that the other party was not being arrogantly presumptuous. At this moment he was filled with dread. Luckily he wasn't rash but instead gathered the strength of the Great Cold Demon Sect. Otherwise he might have ended up with his soul scattered like his disciple Bai Hong. For a time, silence fell within the Luo Tian Star's immortal capturing formation. "It seems there's no one stronger? Truly disappointing. You're acting so recklessly. I thought you'd have more to back it up." Guin spoke again, and suddenly, he threw the heavenly resident's sword out. Boom! With this sword strike, he swept above the black mist, annihilating the Great Cold Demon Sect cultivators one by one. And when the sword blade arrived in front of them, a layer of light burst forth around their bodies. But it was shattered as soon as it appeared, utterly failing to protect them. One sword pierced thousands of li, directly penetrating the Luo Tian Star's immortal capturing formation and returning to reality. The continent cultivators hovering in the air only saw a sword light cutting through the vast expanse of black mist in front of them, making them even more nervous, unclear about the state of the battle within that black mist. After Guin made his strike, Sword Venerable Jesuin immediately gave the command, "Kill!" The Great Cold Demon Sect cultivators from all directions cast their spells. Various spells and divine skills formed a stream of rainbow colors charging towards Guin raised his hand to grab, then retracted it, revealing an individual in his palm. Origin Heaven Capturing Hand. This was the inherent divine skill of the Primordial Chaos Supreme Holy Skill. Today was the first time Guin had used it. The person in his hand was Sword Venerable Jesuin, a white-robed elder. At this moment, Sword Venerable Jesuin's face was filled with fear and despair. Guin directly crushed him to dust. Then, taking up the Qinghong sword, he began the slaughter. Within the continent, an endless stream of cultivators rushed to the edge. When they saw the ocean, they all changed color. The fearsome black mist seemed as if it could devour everything between heaven and earth, giving one the feeling of an impending disaster. Anyone who saw it would be afraid. The black mist surged violently, as if countless demons were raging within. The morale on the side of the continent collapsed completely, with no one willing to fight. What they didn't know was that within the black mist, a large number of Great Cold Demon Sect cultivators were rushing in the same direction. The cultivators of the Great Cold Demon Sect had received the message. Someone had launched an assault on one side. All warriors were to immediately reinforce the Luo Tian Star's immortal capturing formation. Rolling thunderclouds covered the sky, enveloping the entire continent. The sound of thunder was oppressively heavy. In the demon land, within a subsect of the Supreme Sect, Yilan stood on a pavilion, looking up at the sky, tightly clutching the White Spirit's sword in her hand. She felt no anomaly from within the White Spirit's sword, but her heart would not be at peace. "I hope we can safely get through this calamity," Yilan muttered to herself, praying secretly. Although she saw no hope of longevity, she didn't want life to end like this. She had so many things unfinished, so many places unvisited. She had yet to fulfill her promise with her senior brother. How could she be resigned to death? Beneath the thunderclouds, Nine-Finger Divine Lord and Stealing the Five Elements stood shoulder to shoulder, unable to maintain composure, both unconsciously agape with faces full of shock. Not just them, but the continent cultivators felt the same. Newcomers slowed their flight speed due to the sights before them. Within the vast black mist, countless enormous demonic shadows were snuffed out, leaping out, and countless cultivators hovered, all attacking in the same direction, which glinted with sword light. Even though separated by a great distance, unable to see the specifics of the battle, everyone could sense a powerful sword intent. This was not a battle of evenly matched strength, but a massacre with a great disparity in power. The number of cultivators from the great cold demon sect was vast, forming an ocean of people, and within their encirclement, Guin wielded dual swords casually, yet each sword could kill a large number of cultivators and demons. His strength deeply struck the great cold demon sect. No good. We are not his match. Damn. He's doing it on purpose, deliberately not using divine skills, and relying solely on sword chi to slaughter us. Even the Luo Tian star's immortal capturing formation has been broken by him. How could we have any chance of winning? Be careful. His sword is swinging this way. Retreat. Quick. Retreat. The world plunged into clamor and chaos. Each of Guan's sword strikes took not just life but also the overall morale of the great cold demon sect. Life-seizing immortal dared not approach Guin, only able to use long-range divine skills. Giant hands resembling the clasping of fingers descended from the sky, pressing towards Guin, but were instantly shattered upon contact with him, having no effect. Guin strolled leisurely, walking above the black mist, each step followed by a sword swing as casually as if taking a walk, with no swordsmanship to speak of. Every time the great cold demon sect tried to form the Luo Tian star's immortal capturing formation, it would be dispersed by Guan's sword chi. Guin looked at the notifications before him, struggling to contain the emotions in his heart. He was not killing for the sake of killing. He was enacting justice on behalf of the heavens. Suddenly, Guin stopped in his tracks, and as he did, all the great cold demon sect cultivators retreated, leaving 100 li radius around Gu and where no one dared to tread. The cultivators of the great cold demon sect fell silent, all staring dead ahead at Gu, and life-seizing immortal gritted his teeth and said, "The sect leader will arrive soon. Don't panic, everyone." His voice reached the ears of every great cold demon sect cultivator. Yet these words did not boost their morale. "Don't panic." Guin's voice rose, filled with sarcasm, as if he had heard the world's biggest joke. Before life-seizing immortal could speak, Guin suddenly vanished from the spot, frightening the cultivators of the great cold demon sect. Up there, a voice rose, laden with despair. Countless cultivators and demons all looked up, their eyes wide with astonishment. What they saw was a colossal figure whose height could not be judged by the naked eye, standing proudly above the clouds, showing only its upper body, an almost illusory sight. Even the 10,000 zhang demonic shadows appeared tiny in front of this figure, who was none other than Guin himself. At that moment, all the cultivators of the great cold demon sect felt an overpowering suppression that rendered them immobile. Some of the highly cultivated cultivators of the demon sect unconsciously looked down, only to see the billowing black mist below give rise to a land ablaze with dark purple flames, rushing towards them. Life-seizing immortal lowered his gaze and his complexion drastically changed. What was that? A land on fire? No, it was unmistakably a hand large enough to grasp all of them. In the distance, nine-fingered divine lord, stealing the 5 elements, and the continent cultivators were all dumbfounded. At the edge of the ocean, a city was rapidly approaching, and it was none other than divine exotic city. Leah, standing atop a tower in the city, had his eyes wide open, trembling all over, as he watched an immensely huge hand rise from within the infinite expanse of black mist. Even with his eyesight, he couldn't take in the entire hand. He had never imagined such a large hand could exist in this world. If there were hands of heaven and earth, surely it would be this one. Chapter 298. Breaking through a lifespan of 100 million years. I'm not dreaming, am I? Leah muttered to himself, questioning the divine, exotic, immortal spirit perched on his shoulder. The divine exotic immortal spirit also widened its eyes in shock, its mouth agape. From their perspective, the huge hand at the horizon of the sea seemed as large as the ocean itself. If not for the curved fingers, they could hardly tell it was a hand. It felt like it could grab an entire continent with ease. Leah recognized the demonic chi emanating from the gigantic hand as somewhat familiar. Wait, wasn't this the hand of the primordial ancestor? At that thought, a surge of blood rushed through Leah's body uncontrollably, exciting him to the extreme. At the same time, the entire continent's populace could see Gu En's figure, whose massive presence shook mountains and clouds on his path, a sight that overturned their understanding and imagination. In the third medicine valley, thousands of disciples watched with their mouths agape. Ji Xiaoyu also stepped out of his house, completely dumbfounded when he saw Gu En's towering figure. It was as if they were beholding the descent of a deity. What is that? It's Sword Venerable Fudao. It's the silhouette of Sword Venerable Fudao. Really? How can it be so large? Is it not an illusion? Many texts record that Sword Venerable Fudao perceives others using the Demon Shadow Divine skill. I knew Sword Venerable Fudao wouldn't abandon us. A roar of cheers erupted across the continent. Though the Demon Shadow Divine skill was terrifying, the thought of it representing Sword Venerable Fudao uplifted their spirits rather than causing fear. Since the fame of Sword Venerable Fudao, which righteous deed hadn't he done, and which person he killed wasn't among the evil? If it were a normal competition among sects, Sword Venerable Fudao wouldn't have intervened. Otherwise, Supreme Sect would have long become the foremost under heaven. Because of this, other sects respected Sword Venerable Fudao, acknowledging Supreme Sect's luck. In confrontations with Supreme Sect, they were wary of Sword Venerable Fudao, but they weren't afraid he'd harm them, as long as they didn't commit heinous acts. Since Sword Venerable Fudao appeared, many disciples had perished during Supreme Sect's expansion, yet Sword Venerable Fudao hadn't sought vengeance. The sects and clans that decided to stay were bustling with excitement, as if the spring festival had come early. While the continent was invigorated, the cultivators of the Great Cold Demon Sect fell into despair. They watched as Gu En's fingers slowly rose, appearing like ancient colossal peaks ascending, creating an overwhelmingly impactful scene. Even Immortal Path Realm cultivators watched in awe. The life-seizing immortal desperately mobilized his mana, but he couldn't move an inch, feeling as insignificant as an ant. How many years had it been? Ever since he entered the Nirvana realm, not to mention the carefree primordial immortal realm, he hadn't been so embarrassed. The other three carefree primordial immortals were in the same state, utterly immobile despite their full efforts, despair beyond common understanding. If they were so affected, not to mention cultivators of other realms, despair shrouded every heart. This hand had captured millions of the Great Cold Demon Sect's cultivators and demons. Those arriving cultivators from the Great Cold Demon Sect, upon seeing this gigantic hand, fled in panic, throwing aside all their rules and consequences. Gu En looked down at the Great Cold Demon Sect cultivators and the demons they brought within his palm. He also hesitated. Killing too many would weigh on his conscience, and he worried it might bring greater troubles. But remembering the countless lives Bai Hong had slaughtered, his heart hardened. Such a wicked sect, if it's to be extinguished, so be it. If even this act brought divine retribution, then Gu En would question what heaven really stood for. Once Gu En's thoughts cleared, he suddenly clenched his hand. His palm was so huge that a simple clench stirred up a terrifying storm, unleashing waves sweeping toward the horizon. The fierce winds assaulted Divine Exotic City, forcing it to activate its city protection array immediately. Leah watched as the protective barrier around Divine Exotic City violently distorted. He couldn't concern himself with the safety of the city as he looked into the distance, trembling. The sight of that mighty clenched fist was simply too magnificent. He even doubted whether immortal cultivation could really reach such a mighty level. He wondered whether the primordial ancestor was born an immortal, a true immortal, not merely a mortal who had cultivated into one. As Gu En clenched, the heaven and earth fell silent, The terrifying oppression that had engulfed the continent and the surrounding seas was gone. Despite the rolling thunderclouds above, the masses felt as though they had emerged from the clouds into clear skies. You successfully seized 1,228 years of lifespan from Bai Lai Lu's Immortal Realm, 7th layer. You successfully seized 493 years of lifespan from Qin Sushin, Nirvana Realm, 9th layer. You successfully seized 58 years of lifespan from the Sei Crossing Old Immortal, Nirvana Realm, 8th layer. You successfully seized 2,780 years of lifespan from Yunhai Tianjun, Wandering Immortal Realm, 5th layer. Alerts continuously popped up before Gu An's eyes, and then he vanished, but his remaining image in the sky left the beings in awe. The black fog enveloping the sea swiftly dissipated, signifying the end of a massive calamity. Leah recovered his senses and quickly urged the divine exotic immortal spirit to head towards the mainland. In the distance, the master of divine exotic realms stood atop the thunderclouds, infinite divine exotic resentful ghosts behind him, all displaying faces of fear, many visibly trembling. Even degraded to divine exotic resentful ghosts, they still felt terror from the formidable being they had just witnessed. How could such an existence be defeated? Their fear was palpable, dreading the realm master might order an attack. Fortunately, as the formidable presence disappeared, the realm master did not issue the command. The realm master turned and said, "Back to the divine exotic realm." Guen's strength filled him with ecstatic relief, though he restrained his emotions vigorously. Aligning with Zhang Buku was a move well played. As he turned, an unprecedented hope filled his heart. Guen returned to Mystic Valley, feeling Jiang Qiong's restless presence in the 8 scenic caves. Her steps were brisk. He immediately headed towards the 8 scenic caves. As Guen entered the cave pathway, Jiang Qiong's footsteps abruptly stopped. Meanwhile, the lifespan alerts continued to appear before Guan's eyes. Not yet reaching the cave entrance, Guen halted, his attention captured by 2 alerts. For the first time, your lifespan has breached 1 billion years, unlocking the Lifespan Samsara feature. Lifespan Samsara. Every 100 years, execute once, undergoing reincarnation evolution. The evolution will reflect into reality, each use consuming 10 million years of lifespan. All memories acquired during the reincarnation will be transferred into your mind as if you experienced them personally. The duration of the reincarnation evolution is limitless, entirely dependent on your karmic choices during the evolution. Integration of real-world memories requires only an ancient hour. You successfully seized 487 years of lifespan from Zhu Changming, Mahayana Realm, 9th layer. Lifespan Samsara. Seeing the 10 million year lifespan cost made Guen feel it was a ripoff. But after reading the explanation, he suddenly thought it might not be so bad. If during the reincarnation evolution he lived long enough, the Taoist sorcery, divine skills, and understanding of the Tao achieved in one lifetime could potentially be worth more than 10 million years of lifespan. Of course, he might also not survive past 100 years, a huge loss of 10 million years of lifespan. This was a massive gamble. As Guen pondered, Jiang Qiong's voice floated over. "What are you standing there for? Come in already." On hearing this, Guen immediately strode forward. Tips indicating lifespan seizures continued. This series was a massive win. Guen had originally planned to use high-rank medical herbs from an outer world cave to push his lifespan over 1 billion years. But inevitably, some would push their luck too far. Folks get cocky, but if the heavens don't act, then he would. As Guen reached the base of the green vine tree, he couldn't help but laugh and cry. Jiang Qiong had dug a hole and placed a coffin inside. What was this, planning to bury himself? Jiang Qiong pointed at the coffin. "Lie down here with me. It might help us avoid disaster." Guen pretended to be reluctant. "Is this really necessary?" Jiang Qiong glared, swiftly came forward, and pushed him. If he hadn't suppressed his Taoist gang primal energy, Jiang Qiong might have been obliterated. Guen had no choice but to lie down in the coffin. Jiang Qiong jumped in after him, forcibly pressing him down. Lying in the coffin, she swung her right hand, and the lid immediately covered them, plunging their vision into darkness. From the outside, the coffin began sinking into the earth, soon vanishing from sight. Confined in the cramped space of the coffin, Guin and Jiang Qiong squeezed together. In that moment, Guin's heart calmed. Massacring so many, even if all evil, his heart couldn't stay tranquil easily. Excessive killing bred malevolent energy, even a thrilling emotion of breaking free from moral shackles. He needed time to adjust. Now, lying in this darkness, his mood inexplicably steadied. Despite being in the dark, Guin could still see his lifespan alerts. Jiang Qiong's body began to squirm. Her arm was soft. She seemed to feel too squeezed, constantly pressing against Guin and couldn't help asking, "If the calamity doesn't strike, how long must we hide here before we can leave?" Being squeezed in the coffin with Jiang Qiong, he actually found it quite amusing, a completely novel experience for him. Hide for a few decades, at least until we get past the life-seizing immortal's 100-year mark. That long? No, I need to go back. There are disciples in the valley. I can't abandon them. Humph, don't even think about it. Now that you've already lain down, don't think about leaving. As her words fell, Guin felt his left hand grasped by hers. Her hand was cold like a corpse's. Guin tried to break free, but she held on tightly. Only after all the lifespan alerts had settled did Guin come back to his senses. He hadn't checked his lifespan yet, planning to later enjoy the moment of unveiling his lifespan. He spoke up, "It's a bit uncomfortable squeezing like this. Don't you think? Squeezing like this for decades. I'm afraid I might die." Jiang Qiong didn't respond but began to shift her body. Guin stiffened instantly. Jiang Qiong actually lay on top of him, face to face. In the darkness, Guin distinctly felt her breath was a bit agitated, though faint, not escaping his senses. Suddenly, Jiang Qiong's face pressed against Guin's chest, and he could feel one of her legs rubbing against his shin. "This is bad. Things have gone too far." Guin fake coughed. "Why are you so heavy?" Jiang Qiong's breathing hitched, then Guin felt a hand land on his waist, fingers pinching his flesh. Chapter 299. Terrifying Lifespan. Kid, do you truly not know how to speak? Or are you purposely trying to irritate me? In the darkness, Jiang Qiong's voice resounded, somewhat grinding her teeth in frustration. But her hand did not forcefully pinch Guin. It was merely a warning. Guin, of course, had intentionally disrupted the atmosphere. He feigned a cough and began asking Jiang Qiong what she would like to do after the disaster was over. Jiang Qiong fell into silence, her limbs ceasing to move as she started to contemplate the question seriously. In truth, she had always been unclear about what she really wanted to do. She had done many things to become stronger, but when the apocalyptic disaster arrived, she felt that her actions were meaningless. Guin did not disturb her, allowing her to think it over. However, the moment the silence settled, his mind began to wander. Pinned down by Jiang Qiong, Guin could feel every part of her body pressing against him. How could he remain calm? At that moment, the plots of Green Hero Travelogue, Supreme Secret Records, Black Heroes Travelogue, and many others flashed through his mind. Suddenly, he felt Jiang Qiong tremble slightly. He hurriedly shifted his thoughts to ponder what exactly lifespan samsara was. As his thoughts shifted, Jiang Qiong calmed down. She spoke up, "If we truly can survive this catastrophe, then I'll focus on developing the Juhua sect. I won't wander around anymore. I feel like all these years of running about haven't really counted for much." "That's good," Guin replied. "To avoid any dangers." Jiang Qiong suddenly stretched out her hand, hugged Guin tightly, and whispered softly, "The calamity of the ephemera sect left me without any relatives. You are now the only person I care about. Back when you first entered the 8 scenic caves, I was considering whether to kill you or not. Who would have thought that after so many years, you would become so important to me?" Hearing this, Guin stiffened slightly and replied helplessly, "Is it that serious? I haven't been all that good to you. On the contrary, you've taught me quite a few spells." Setting aside the matter of sword Venerable Fudao supporting Jiang Qiong, Guwen genuinely felt that his outward contributions to Jiang Qiong paled in comparison to what she had offered him. Many spells Jiang Qiong taught him he still used to this day. She had also given him magic artifacts and heavenly treasures. How can you say you haven't been good to me? You've managed the 8 scenic caves very well, and you've never betrayed me. Every time I've come back, you've taken good care of me. Affection isn't entirely about contributions. If you were stronger, you would definitely treat me even better. I understand that. And I felt right from our first meeting that you had the ability to kill me. You hit it well, but I knew not only that you didn't kill me, but also that you were obedient to me. Listening to Jiang Qiong, Guwen suddenly didn't know what to say. Of course, you rascal, you are good to everyone. Everyone in the valley praises you. Jiang Qiong suddenly snorted. Hearing this, Guwen immediately said, That's what makes me a scary talent. Being good to everybody. Making it hard to interpret my thoughts. Yes, but you never ask others for returns, which means you genuinely care for those around you and aren't aiming for anything. Stop undermining yourself. I can feel whether you are genuine or not. Pretense cannot last long. Jiang Qiong said softly. Guwen, seemingly startled, said, You're not thinking of exchanging vows, are you? That won't work. My junior sister and I plan to get married in the last 100 years of our lives. Jiang Qiong laughed and said, The last 100 years? What if one of you lives longer? Whoever lives longer, it's still the same path to go down. The pursuit of immortal cultivation isn't about enduring love, but about eternal life. You certainly see it clearly. Yes. So don't harbor any improper thoughts about me. Why can't I? At the Thousand Autumn Pavilion, it's common for one person to have multiple Taoist friends, and female cultivators can have many Taoist friends too, as long as she is strong enough. Now I am stronger than you, and you can't escape my grasp unless one day your cultivation surpasses mine. Jiang Qiong said proudly, her hand catching Guwen's face as she spoke. She suddenly began her offensive. You demon cultivator! Faking refuge from the calamity and actually abusing me? You can scream all you want now, it's useless. Be careful, I won't be nice. Come on, seeing your cultivation. I'm too lazy to immobilize you. I just like seeing you struggle. Don't worry, it'll be gentle. Jiang Qiong laughed very proudly, grabbing Guwen's wrists with her hands, pinning him down. Then, Guwen felt something soft press on his face, beginning to explore around. Not good. This guy's gone wild. A thought crossed Guwen's mind, and the earth suddenly trembled. Jiang Qiong immediately stopped, not daring to move. Guwen breathed a sigh of relief, but just then, Jiang Qiong suddenly launched a sneak attack, catching him off guard. Wait! It seems the disaster is over, Guwen suddenly said. How can you be sure? Jiang Qiong questioned. Before finding you, I saw Sword Venerable Fu Dao make a move. Oh? Then you still came, it seems you also expected something to happen between us. I just saw you were prepared and didn't want to waste our time. Let's go out and see. Is that so? Really, let's go up. I'll think about it. Boom! Beneath the green vine tree, the earth stirred, and a coffin rose, its lid popping open, and Guwen immediately leaped out, then straightened his clothes. Nearly lost my virginity. I can't let the over 200 years' worth of my preserved virginity be breached. Guwen secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Mouth is okay, but can't leak vital energy. Jiang Qiong slowly climbed out of the coffin, her hair slightly disheveled, her clothes not neat. She raised her eyes to look at Guwen, giving him a seductive smile that caused him to quickly turn his head. We should stop calling me martial master. After all, I forcefully took Cheng Xiandan as a disciple, and Cheng Xiandan took you with ulterior motives, so it's not a real lineage. No, you brat never even called me martial master. Really, all men are the same. It's just that you, kid, are reluctant yet compliant, guarding against something, Jiang Qiong said, glaring at Guwen dropped a sentence and left. I'm going to check the situation. He immediately slipped away. Jiang Qiong went to the edge of the pit, watching his retreating back, She licked her lips as if savoring something. When Guwen returned to the third medicine valley, the valley was still bustling with activity. Stealing the 5 elements and 9-finger divine lord had also come back, standing together with Shin Shinzi, separated by a restriction, discussing the formidable power of sword venerable Fudao, unable to contain their emotions. To suppress the entire great cold demon sect with one hand was too exaggerated. It subverted everyone's understanding. For decades, the power of the great cold demon sect had been deeply rooted in people's hearts. Only because of understanding the terror of the great cold demon sect did everyone realize how incredibly powerful sword venerable Fudao was. Guwen looked up and saw a figure hovering above the great heavenly spirit land, watching the continent where Guwen was. The 9th layer of the carefree immortal realm. Although only one small realm higher than the sword venerable, the presence far surpassed the sword venerable, the gap enormous. Presumably, he was the master of the great cold demon sect. At this moment, this master only dared to watch from a distance, not daring to come down. Guwen also saw those fleeing cultivators of the great cold demon sect disperse like monkeys scattering from a fallen tree, already completely devoid of will to fight. He did not continue to pursue the kill, one reason being that the remaining cultivators were not as powerful as those he had suppressed, and another being he felt many presences approaching, even the presence of divine immortal of wondrous Dharma. Yes, definitely the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma. However, the person did not come with malice, and the direction was exactly where the holy land of Holy Court was located. Now that the Holy Court had appeared, it would not be appropriate for him to continue the chase. Next, it would be seen what stance the Holy Court took. Guwen brought up his attribute panel. Name, Guwen, lifespan, 210/790, 407, 832, physique, primordial karmic body, cultivation level, divine immortal of wondrous Dharma realm, 9th layer, 790 million years of lifespan. Guwen suddenly felt like cursing. That was too awesome. The guilt from the killing faded instantly. Besides, he had not killed indiscriminately. He was executing justice on heaven's behalf, ultimately for the people. Finally, he could fully upgrade. Guwen grinned. Very close to 1 billion now. Should he wait a bit longer? Forget it. Damn it, just 100 million years. He had to wait a long time. How much longer for the remaining 200 million years? Look for a chance to break through. And it was a comprehensive upgrade. Heart surging with excitement, Guwen even felt like trying out a 10 million year lifespan samsara just to see what it was. He walked towards the pavilion clusters, shouting with mana. Today, to thank Sword Venerable Fudao for resolving the calamity. Let's celebrate tonight. Consider it a holiday. Deacons get moving. His voice spread throughout Medicine Valley. Achieving this feat with core formation realm cultivation was not difficult. And soon, various cheers rose within the valley. When Guwen reached his own pavilion, Ji Xiaoyu came up to him indicating with her eyes. They both went upstairs and closed the door. I think Sword Venerable Fudao's silhouette seemed familiar, Ji Xiaoyu said seriously, causing Guwen's heart to tremble. What did that mean? Could she have linked it to me? Guwen immediately became uneasy. A supreme power who suppressed the great cold demon sect spooked by a core formation realm cultivator. He asked with a frown, could it be that Sword Venerable Fudao originates from the Ji family? Ji Xiaoyu shook her head. No, I saw him in a dream. It must have been a scene from a past life. Hearing this, Guwen breathed a sigh of relief, but his brows furrowed even deeper. Today's battle was an eye-opener. I suddenly feel that I can't die too early in this life. I need to follow in the footsteps of Sword Venerable Fudao. Ji Xiaoyu spoke again, her face full of admiration. Chase after Sword Venerable Fudao? He was divine immortal of wondrous Dharma realm, 9th layer. Guwen didn't discourage Ji Xiaoyu. What if she really could achieve it? He started motivating Ji Xiaoyu. They chatted for a while before Ji Xiaoyu finally left. But when she reached the door, she stopped, turned back to look at Guwen, and said, the scent of a woman on you is stronger now. Still the same woman as last time. You two must have entangled a bit, although you don't seem to have leaked any essence. After that, She pushed the door open and left without closing it. Guwen stood there puzzled. How did she figure that out? What kind of divine skill was that, or was it a talent? Guwen didn't dwell on it. Living another life, he planned to be carefree and at ease. Why worry too much? Just follow his heart. He started waiting for that divine immortal of wondrous Dharma to leave. As long as the person didn't mess around, and once they left, he would find a place to break through. Chapter 300. 7 Divine Golden Bodies. Primordial ultimate body, the mysterious divine immortal of wondrous Dharma, wandered in this mortal world region, never stepping onto the continent where Guwen was located. A day and a night later he left. Starting from the second day, rumors about the great cold demon sect being annihilated single-handedly by sword venerable Fudao spread like a hurricane across the seas, shocking the countless beings that were fleeing. Their first reaction was disbelief, as the news sounded too preposterous. The world was in an uproar, and within the supreme sect, it was a time of celebration, with dazzling lights and decoration everywhere. Everyone was singing praises of Sword Venerable Fudao's magnificent feats and mighty power. This time, Sword Venerable Fudao's rescue efforts had a wider reach than ever before. How could they not be proud? They were unclear if there truly were immortals who cared for the common folk in this world. But at least in their hearts, Sword Venerable Fudao was an immortal who brought salvation to all living beings. The day after the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma left, Guwen quietly departed from the continent. He headed south, moving away from the mortal world region where the supreme sect was located. Eventually, he arrived at a desolate sea, where the number of beings was extremely sparse. Whether deep within the sea or above its surface, numerous lost souls and wild ghosts floated about. The sky above this place was covered with dense, oppressive clouds, but the spiritual energy here was quite abundant. After surveying the area with his divine sense, Guwen discovered an island deep within the ocean guarded by powerful restrictions. If he were to break through forcefully, he would undoubtedly alert the entity within. He speculated that a carefree primordial immortal might be hiding inside because, although the restrictions were strong, he felt it wouldn't be difficult to break through if he wanted. No wonder the spiritual energy was so abundant here, yet there were so few beings. It turns out a malevolent deity was hidden within. Guwen landed on an uninhabited isolated island and immediately activated the lifespan barrier. 790 million years of lifespan. The more he looked at it, the more invigorating it felt. He had never been so affluent before. Guwen sat cross-legged in front of a withered tree, looking at his attribute panel, chuckling to himself. First, he would enjoy the moment for a while longer. After a good while, Guwen then reined in his emotions and decided to give lifespan samsara a try. He would test the waters with 10 million years. If this function turned out to be ineffective, he would dismiss it forever, just like the lifespan deduction he had initiated before. At 20, you joined the Tai sect, and with your exceptional cultivation level and talent, you became a direct disciple, making a name for yourself within the sect. At 21, you utilized the lifespan deduction cultivation technique to master the 7 hearts technique. At 22, jealous of you, the sect leader's son ambushed you while you were on a mission, surrounding you with his people. You executed all his followers, leaving only the sect leader's son alive. He knelt before you, begging for mercy, and you hesitated. Do you choose to execute him? Kill. Guwen didn't hesitate, and the prompt continued to appear. Killing men and sparing women? Seems like there's something wrong with the standard. Huh? Guwen criticized himself internally. Subsequently, the him in the reincarnation returned to the Tai sect, faced continuous strife and enmity, and he always chose to kill, since it was others who provoked him. Killing led to the unveiling of secrets, and he was pursued by the Tai sect and even placed on a wanted list. After that, almost every year, he was embroiled in battles, sometimes several times within a year. Once, Guwen chose to save a wounded cultivator he encountered by chance, only for that person to summon a large group of cultivators to ambush him. intending to seize the magic artifact in his possession. Angered, Guan's killing intent intensified. One betrayal after another, jealousy, and feuds kept unfolding. What an impressive turn of events. Indeed, this was the dark great heaven and earth, and the world seemed excessively grim. Over the first 50 years, Guan encountered not a single kind-hearted cultivator. He was fighting alone the entire time. The most distressing part for him was that, in order to get back at him, his enemies extracted the souls of his family still in the mountain village and refined them into resentful ghosts to be embedded in ghost devices. Furious, Guan became even more ruthless in his subsequent choices, always responding to killing with killing. His lifespan accumulated rapidly, and by 50, he had reached the cultivation level of loose immortal realm, becoming the East Profound Domain's killing god. At the age of 65, you encountered the girl you once spared, Chang Jialan. She had now become a disciple of the Blue Sky Holy Sect, a renowned genius. She recognized you and was very grateful. You were moved by her attitude. At 66, pursued by Chang Jialan, you both became Taoist friends. At 67, Chang Jialan gave birth to a son and a daughter for you, and you cherished her even more. At 68, while you were cultivating, a wandering carefree primordial immortal from the Blue Sky Holy Sect descended. He was known as the Black Profound Emperor and crushed you to death. Reincarnation ends. What? It's over already? Guan nearly spit blood. For 10 million years of lifespan, he only got 68 years of life? Black Profound Emperor. Okay, very good. Without giving Guan time to ponder more, a vast array of memories flooded his mind. The life of Chu Lu, as if he had experienced it himself. However, since it was reincarnation evolution, he didn't feel the length during the assimilation process. It was like recalling past memories, recalling some experiences, a rather peculiar sensation. Although he only lived for 68 years in this life, Chu Lu improved a cultivation technique over his lifetime, and even evolved it into a divine skill that caused a sensation in both the past and the present. Developed from the 7 Hearts technique after numerous enhancements, it is now known as the 7 Divine Gold Bodies. 7 Divine Gold Bodies with an inherent cultivation technique. Once mastered, it forms 7 souls, each equipped with divine skills, allowing him to resurrect even if killed. In memory, getting crushed by the Black Profound Emperor wasn't as straightforward. He resurrected 6 times in the Black Profound Emperor's hands, but the result was the same. The gap in cultivation level was too vast. His teleportation divine power was unable to let him escape. After assimilating the 7 divine gold bodies, Guan felt somewhat placated. It is hard to say if the value of the 7 divine gold bodies could match 10 million years of lifespan, but it certainly was not something to be gained with just 1 or 2 million years of lifespan. The skill was extremely powerful, allowing nascent soul realm Chu Lu to severely injure enemies of the 2nd level of Wandering Immortal Realm, proving its strength. It was not enough perseverance. Guan realized that in reincarnation evolution, he could only make decisions at destiny's turning points and couldn't control his reincarnated self. Thinking about it, didn't this mean that all other worlds of reincarnation also had their own thought processes? Isn't this also the case with reincarnation in reality? Ji Xiaoyu in this life was completely different from her previous life. Guan withdrew his thoughts, noticing that the ground was full of spiritual energy. This showed that reincarnation evolution also consumed real-world spiritual energy. Fortunately, he had changed locations to avoid affecting the Supreme Sect and the continent. Time to get down to real business. Today, he would break through a major realm. Guan accessed the attribute panel and poured 20 million years of lifespan into physique. Primordial karmic body advanced to primordial chaos body, then ascended to primordial ultimate body, awakening the great divine power, the primordial chaos grand disk. This divine skill was an amalgamation of attack, defense, and sealing abilities, larger and more formidable than regular heaven and earth rules, possessing the might to crush heaven and earth rules. Guan immediately trained this divine skill to mastery realm. Vast spiritual energy surged into Guan's mind, and his consciousness entered a state of sudden enlightenment. Primordial ultimate body and primordial karmic body, although both named after primordial, had a huge disparity. By reaching ultimate body, one could easily see through heaven and earth rules as well as cause and effect, exerting absolute suppression over the primordial body type. Although Guwen had not yet encountered a primordial body type, he felt that primordial must exist. After all, it was achieved through the elevation of his own body type, indicating that if the mortals of the great heavenly spirit land traced back their ancestry, they might very well be linked to primordial. He just did not know where primordial was located. As Guwen devoured the spiritual energy, the silent and gloomy sea stirred into a tempest, as a powerful divine sense swept across the sea. Unfortunately, no matter how much it searched, it could not find Guwen. An ancient hour later, Guwen finally opened his eyes, and his physique was completely transformed into a primordial ultimate body. His current strength had reached a terrifying level, and the sensation of power was exceedingly delightful. He even wanted to find someone to test his newfound strength against. Fortunately, he resisted the urge. Cannot drift away. Chu Lu was too overconfident, killing throughout his path, only to be crushed to death by a cultivator several major realms above. Guwen looked at the cultivation technique section. Primordial chaos, supreme holy skill, and all things form and energy art were each worth 20 million years of lifespan. The reason he only used 20 million years of lifespan was that he started to covet the function that would unlock with 1 billion years of lifespan. At this moment, the entire ocean was experiencing a violent storm, with endless towering waves, as the divine sense of a carefree primordial immortal frantically scanned the area. Guwen didn't mind since the area was mostly inhabited by lost souls and wild ghosts who wandered the mortal world, suffering from the rejection of the heaven and earth rules. He hesitated for a moment, then decided to invest 5 million years of his lifespan. It was uncertain whether the early investment of 100 million years of lifespan could erase the gap in the difficulty of cultivation between the divine immortal of wondrous dharma and higher realms. You practiced chi absorption cultivation for 30,000 years, forcefully attempting to assault the Tao void mysterious immortal realm with the great accomplishment of infinite primordial creation, starting the tribulation crossing. You didn't endure the 6 realms destiny ultimate void tribulation, failing the tribulation 30,000 years for 1 tribulation crossing. Guwen was thrilled, knowing that previously, when he attempted to reach the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma realm, it took 60,000 years for 1 chance to cross the tribulation. However, even more surprising events occurred. You practiced chi absorption cultivation for 300,000 years. You endured the 6 realms destiny ultimate void tribulation with the forceful use of the great accomplishment of infinite primordial creation, and succeeded in the tribulation crossing, advancing your cultivation level to the first layer of the Tao void mysterious immortal realm. You practiced chi absorption cultivation for 500,000 years, advancing your cultivation level to the second layer of the Tao void mysterious immortal realm. 10 successful crossings. I'm really fucking strong. Guwen was ecstatic, but as he looked further, his smile gradually faded. The time required for each level in the Tao void mysterious immortal realm kept increasing. You practiced chi absorption cultivation for 4 million years, advancing your cultivation level to the 8th layer of the Tao void mysterious immortal realm. You practiced chi absorption cultivation for 4.7 million years, advancing your cultivation level to the 9th layer of the Tao void mysterious immortal realm. You practiced chi absorption cultivation for 5 million years, forcefully assailing the divine thought true immortal realm with the great accomplishment of infinite primordial creation, starting the tribulation crossing. You didn't endure the heavenly Tao 49 mysterious void tribulation, failing the tribulation. That's good. Reaching the 9th layer of the Tao void mysterious immortal realm in 5 million years was an unexpectedly pleasant surprise. But what's after was shocking, an attempt of tribulation every 300,000 years. If following the old pattern, failing 100 times would mean 30 million years of lifespan. Failing 200 times would mean 60 million years of lifespan. That's ridiculously exaggerated. Is the divine thought true immortal that mighty? It's a big leap. Guwen didn't question it much, given he hadn't even heard of the Tao void mysterious immortal, let alone the higher divine thought true immortal. Once again, nature's spiritual energy surged towards him. The entire ocean's spiritual energy abruptly sank, and its range rapidly expanded. Damn, this commotion is a bit excessive. Guwen was secretly alarmed, feeling he might once again bring about a calamity to the mortal world. The vast amounts of spiritual energy required to transition from the 9th layer of the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma to the 9th layer of the Tao void mysterious immortal far exceeded Guwen's imagination. However, he could judge the resources of the great heavenly spirit land through this disturbance. If his breakthrough affected the entire great heavenly spirit land, it would indicate that the Tao void mysterious realm cultivators in the great heavenly spirit land were few and far between. While feeling the transformation within himself, Guwen observed the surroundings. The range of spiritual energy extraction grew larger, and in less than 30 minutes, it exceeded the size of the area the great cold demon sect planned to annihilate and was still rapidly increasing. Time swiftly passed. An hour later, Guwen forcefully achieved the Tao void mysterious immortal. Regardless of the realm, the evolutionary cultivation would always compress the breakthrough into 1 hour. The mysteries of the Tao void mysterious immortal flooded into his mind. A Tao void mysterious immortal could transcend universal rules and travel through the Great Thousand World. The so-called Great Thousand World consists of countless realms like the Great Heavenly Spirit Land, and only reaching this level would one touch the barriers of the universe. Of course, not all universes can be easily traversed, as there are also differences in strength among them. The power of a mysterious immortal is even greater, capable of transforming all things into living beings. Reaching this level means starting to condense one's own Tao. The so-called Tao is the condensation of the overall path of immortal cultivation, manifesting as will, capable of condensing a Tao form and using it to battle and suppress everything. Guwen was immersed in the transformation brought by the Tao void mysterious immortal, unable to extricate himself. Only when his cultivation level broke through to the 2nd layer of the Tao void mysterious immortal realm did his consciousness awaken. He looked up, the universe no longer looked so distant to him. His gaze and divine sense reached perfect unity, allowing him even to peer into the ends of the universe. He saw the silent destruction domain described by Wuxia, a place of utter darkness emitting a terrifying aura that made it difficult for him to infiltrate lightly. Chapter 302. Absolutely not intoxicating. Under the cloak of night, the vast ocean was riddled with shadows of great cultivators flitting by, and many sea monsters leaped out of the water, making the night all the more terrifying. The isolated island where Guwen was situated was surrounded by terrifying waves, which could engulf it at any moment. Yet, he was still waiting for the breakthrough to conclude. The amount of spiritual energy needed for each minor realm within the Tao void mysterious immortal realm far exceeded that for breakthroughs in previous major realms. Guwen had been observing the outside world, for he wanted to know the impact of this breakthrough on the great heavenly spirit land. By now, the range of the descending spiritual energy had become enormously exaggerated. However, in comparison to the entire great heavenly spirit land, it was still not sufficient to shake the whole. The great heavenly spirit land was far too vast. Even though Guwen could now see beyond the heavens, he could not overlook the vastness within the great heavenly spirit land. As time elapsed, more and more great cultivators arrived to protect the oceans from all corners, and even sects that Guwen previously dared not spy upon sent out great cultivators. Even the dynasty populated entirely by heavenly spirit life forms had sent people out. Guwen suddenly discovered an interesting point. The immortal spirit dynasty and the holy court were situated on opposite sides of the great heavenly spirit land, as distant from each other as possible, giving a clear demarcation. He would have to find an opportunity to learn about the immortal spirit dynasty from Wuxia next time. Guwen saw that apart from this stretch of the ocean, the continents and islands in other seas were all protected by great cultivators, even floating in the air near the continent where the supreme sect was located, holding back the waves. The holy court's efficiency was truly formidable, It could offer swift protection to the common people within a short period of time, truly worthy of its name. It is worth mentioning that the carefree primordial immortal of this ocean region had been the target of a manhunt. He was besieged by several other carefree primordial immortals and had already fled to outer heaven. Guwen couldn't help but mourn him silently. My sin, my sin. Although the other party became involved because of him, Guwen had no choice. He had to break through. Going anywhere would attract attention. Going to outer heaven would attract at least those at the heaven and earth flying immortal realm, which would be far too dangerous. However, considering the current commotion, Guwen's next breakthrough would have to take place outside of heaven. Although outer heaven was dangerous, Tao Void Mysterious Immortal was not weak. Guwen had already seen the words, Divine Thought True Immortal, and had a vast lifespan. He couldn't feel at ease without reaching the 9th layer of Divine Thought True Immortal. He would have to control his next breakthrough a bit more. Reaching the 9th layer, he would have to restrain himself and not prematurely peer into the name of the next realm, lest his heart itch with curiosity. Guwen thought silently to himself. The anomalies above the ocean had not affected outer heaven. The moon set and the sun rose. When morning arrived, the turmoil of spiritual energy over the ocean gradually returned to calm. Guwen had finally reached the 9th level of Tao Void Mysterious Immortal. He slowly opened his eyes, and the golden patterns on his forehead shone with an illusory vertical golden eye. The pupil of the primordial divine eye was gradually turning black, then deep gray, making this vertical eye all the more terrifying and oppressive. With a thought, Guwen caused the primordial divine eye to disappear. He slowly stood up. Without taking a step, his figure vanished on the spot from the island. Almost instantaneously, he arrived within the Nianchu cave of Heavenly Phoenix Mountain. Tian Yaoer, Tian Qing, and Tian Bai were all immersed in cultivation. The cave was quiet, save for the sound of dripping water, exuding a profound serenity. Guwen clapped his hands, and the 3 demons awoke. They quickly came out of the house and upon seeing Guwen, were overjoyed and rushed to meet him. Master, what exactly happened outside these past 2 days? Yes, indeed. Such a terrifying aura came through. Master, are you all right? The 3 demons chattered excitedly, their questions buzzing with enthusiasm. Guwen felt a pang of guilt. He should have visited sooner. Instead, he had let them worry for so long. Come on, let's go to the outer world cave, Guwen called out, then took the 3 demons away with him. Along the way, the 3 demons talked incessantly, and Guwen did not hide anything from them, recounting the calamities they encountered outside. Divine exotic resentful ghosts, divine exotic ghost kings, the great cold demon sect, the heavenly fire catastrophe, and more. All of these stories made them tremble with fear. But hearing from Guwen that the calamity had passed, they finally breathed a sigh of relief. They began to wonder who had resolved the calamity. Guwen said even he wasn't sure. When they arrived at the outer world cave, Guwen raised his hand. Countless storage bags, storage rings, and storage dharma artifacts flew out of his sleeves and piled up on the open ground. The 3 demons were stunned. Tian Yaoer couldn't help but ask, "Why are there so many?" Guwen didn't answer. After piling the collected storage dharma artifacts into a mountain, he swept over them with his divine sense, dispelling all restrictions. In an instant, he obliterated anything that might be harmful. I entrust these to you. Chapter 303 Fighting Will. Guwen's hostility. Seeing the prompt of reincarnation evolution, Guwen hesitated. If it had been earlier, he would have definitely chosen to expose the crimes of the 3rd concubine to seek justice for himself. But Chu Lu's short life had left him with a psychological shadow. Although lifespan samsara was just an evolution and would not harm his original self, he was toying with 10 million years of lifespan. Moreover, the prompt was brief, and he couldn't analyze the specifics of the situation or understand the background of the 3rd concubine. What if exposing her would bring about a deadly disaster? Forget it, he should endure it for now. Although it was a grieving, it wasn't something he personally experienced. You choose to reveal you were poisoned by the third concubine. A turmoil in the Shao Kingdom's mansion thus resolved. At the age of 8, you began to practice swordsmanship and accidentally cut a spirit grass during the process, claiming 8 years of lifespan and marking a turning point in your life of immortal cultivation. At 12, thanks to lifespan evolution, your cultivation level broke through to the nascent soul realm. At 17, the Great Ming dynasty was besieged by 3 dynasties. The lands shattered, and you followed the Shao family's southward migration, continuously encountering attacks and fierce battles, and your lifespan grew quickly. At 18, during the escape, you encountered 2 severely injured cultivators, 1 male and 1 female, each begging you to save them and kill the other, plunging you into hesitation. You choose to save the male or the female, to kill the male or the female. Neither save nor kill. Guwen made his choice without hesitation. You didn't make a move, you watched the 2 die, and after their death you took their storage bags. Seeing this line of prompt, Guwen almost cursed loudly. Why so impulsive? The following years were filled with various escapes and battles. Until, at 27, an elder of the Great Dayan sect from the Mahayana realm suspected you of slaughtering his descendants since you possessed their descendant storage bag. You vehemently denied it, yet he still tried to kill you, and finally, both of you were heavily injured, and you got separated from your family. Fighting a Mahayan realm cultivator at the age of 27, Shao Shengtian indeed had some substance. It seems his path was quite wild. Guwen lamented in his heart. He could only see a general description and didn't know how many enemies Shao Shengtian had killed during this process. At 30, you entered the Luoqing sect to focus on cultivation. At 45, the Shao family was slaughtered. Deeply grieving upon learning this, you began to investigate who the enemy was. At 50, after 5 years of investigation, you found that the power that slaughtered the Shao family was the Li family from the East Profound Domain. You left the Luoqing sect alone to rush to the East Profound Domain. Seeing the words East Profound Domain, Guwen secretly felt that something was amiss. Why, out of nowhere, was his family destroyed again? Speaking of which, Guwen in this life also had no relatives, living alone in the Ji family mansion. Could this be fate? At 60, you stormed the secret realm assessment of the East Profound Saint Mansion, swept through the geniuses of East Profound Domain, and became renowned throughout the world. At 70, you cultivated the Heavenly Gang Holy Body in the East Profound Saint Mansion. The mansion master favored you greatly, wishing to betroth his youngest daughter to you, whether you accept. Do not accept. You refused the mansion master's goodwill. He then took you as a disciple, and you received great cultivation resources from the East Profound Saint Mansion. Guwen smiled when he saw this. That's more like it. The following life was filled with various cultivations. Shao Shengtian continually enhanced his physique, cultivation technique, and divine skills. His choices were limited, focusing on only one method of each type. Years swiftly passed. At 137, you participated in the holy competitions of the 5 domains. With an overwhelmingly dominant appearance, you claimed the title of the strongest prodigy of the era, and the name of the Heavenly Gang Holy Body spread across the great heaven and earth. At 138, you encountered a cultivator from the Li family during an externship. Due to a deep-seated hatred, you erupted into conflict with the Li family, encountering a mysterious carefree primordial immortal who intervened and nearly killed you. Fortunately, a cultivator named Hanging Pot saved you when you were severely injured. At 139, before your injuries fully healed, the Li family attacked again, vowing to annihilate you. Hanging Pot consumed his true yuan, using a great divine power to shift you and his children into a space-time rift. The 3 of you fell into the Dark Continent. At 140, Hanging Pot's son couldn't withstand the invasion of dark powers, ultimately perishing, his soul turning into a dark undead and disappearing, and you took his sister to search for him. At 142, the 2 of you failed to escape the Dark Continent. Hanging Pot's daughter also turned into a dark undead. You, enraged, began slaughtering the dark undead of the Dark Continent. At 143, you encountered the Black Profound Emperor from the Tao Void mysterious immortal realm, who extinguished your soul. Reincarnation ends. What? Damn black profound emperor again. How did he reach the Tao void mysterious immortal realm this time? There were still survivors from the great cold demon sect, but they were like scattered monkeys after a tree falls, many enemies kicking them while down. Baizia was very curious about Sword Venerable Fudao, asking Guin when this person had emerged. Guin then said he was in seclusion before, also unsure when Sword Venerable Fudao appeared. The two talked for a long time, and the conversation was mostly Guin asking questions and Baizia patiently answering. An hour later, Guin suddenly asked, Taoist friend Bai, have you ever heard of the Dark Continent? Baizia frowned. Surprised he asked, the Dark Continent? Never heard of it. Is it powerful? Where is it? Hearing this, Guin could only say, I'm not clear either. Just heard a senior mention this name, so I was curious. Afterward, he bid farewell to Baizia. Baizia hurriedly said, Mortal World Peak will soon hold a 10,000-year summit. You must come, officially taking over as Peak Master. Guin nodded, then flew toward the direction away from the Supreme Sect. As he flew far away, Baizia muttered, Dark Continent. Why does it feel like I've heard it somewhere? Chapter 304. Breakthrough to the Divine Thought True Immortal Realm 9 Layers. After bidding farewell to Baizia, Guin took a detour, only then returning to the Third Medicine Valley. He finished writing the current secret book, then went downstairs to join the disciples in shoveling snow. During the process of shoveling snow, his thoughts were constantly in outer heaven. When would those wandering cultivators of the Holy Court disperse? They couldn't stop Guin. He was just worried that the noise from his breakthrough would be too loud and attract them near the lifespan barrier. What if someone intruded? Guin didn't want to make unnecessary enemies with the Holy Court, nor did he want anyone to discover his true cultivation level. He could only wait. As winter passed and spring arrived, the years went by. The news of Sword Venerable Fudao's world-saving feats spread widely across this region of the mortal world, earning more and more praises, and his fame spread throughout the great heaven and earth. Relative to the tumultuous seas, the continent quickly calmed down since they had heard of Sword Venerable Fudao's feats not for the first time. However, a change in the dynamics occurred in the human race's world. The forces that had fled returned but could no longer maintain their former dominance, while those who stayed behind gained more support and developed rapidly. The other continent on the Nine Nether Road was even more dangerous. The sects and families of the Taizong dynasty couldn't secure a footing there, and the fleeing forces returned in disgrace within a few years. Jiang Qiong also returned to the Juhua sect, beginning to develop the sect peacefully. Guan's days returned to being leisurely. Before he knew it, 10 years had passed. The wandering cultivators of the Holy Court outside heaven finally dispersed, and Guin was waiting for this day. He immediately set off, leaving quietly. In just one step, he reached the depths of the universe, flying towards a location he had chosen long ago. It was a gigantic meteorite, even larger than the continent where the Supreme Sect was located. Guin landed on the meteorite. Looking around, the great heavenly spirit land seemed very distant. Reckoned for a heaven and earth flying immortal, it would also be impossible to spy with the naked eye. Turning around, the universe's depths behind him were extremely dark. From here to the silent destruction domain was closer than to the great heavenly spirit land. This was also intentional on his part, to make the Holy Court think that the anomalies were caused by a heavenly demon. He sat down on the spot, activating the lifespan barrier. He then pulled up his attribute panel. Name: Guin, lifespan 220/639, 660, 342. Physique: primordial ultimate body. Cultivation level: divine immortal of wondrous Dharma realm 9th layer. This lifespan was truly a delight to behold. He had to be more careful about this breakthrough. The last time he crossed the lifespan barrier, he had consumed tens of millions of years of lifespan, a figure that could not be ignored. Guwen took a deep breath, deciding to directly aim for a breakthrough in cultivation level. Tribulation every 300,000 years, still quite frightening. 1 billion, get on board. You practiced chi absorption cultivation for 300,000 years. With the great accomplishment of the infinitive creation dharma, you forcefully struck at the divine thought true immortal realm, began facing the tribulation. You failed to endure 49 heavenly Tao mysterious void tribulations, and the tribulation failed. You practiced chi absorption cultivation for 600,000 years. With the great accomplishment of the infinitive creation dharma, you forcefully struck at the divine thought true immortal realm, began facing the tribulation. You failed to endure 49 heavenly Tao mysterious void tribulations, and the tribulation failed. Gu and remained expressionless, already used to failure. No matter, he still had 5 billion years, he didn't believe they could drain him completely. However, something terrible happened. When his tribulation failures exceeded 100 times, his expression became grave. When his tribulation failures exceeded 200 times, his expression became ugly. When 1 billion years were all used up, he was on the verge of a breakdown. What was this heavenly Tao 49 mysterious void tribulation? Was it this absurd? Once Guwen successfully broke through, he must investigate the origin of this heavenly tribulation. Even within the same realm, heavenly tribulations are not fixed. Taking mortal world peak, for instance, their recorded types of heavenly tribulations exceeded 10,000. The rule summarized by the immortal cultivation world is that the more powerful you are within the same realm, the more terrifying the heavenly tribulation. However, those cultivators, despite an increased difficulty in their tribulation, could rely on formations, dharma treasures, and sect teachings for support. Guwen could only rely on himself, owning no dharma treasures. After a full aspect promotion, he himself was terrifyingly strong. How could such a him fail more than 300 times? Guwen gritted his teeth, choosing to commit 30 million years of lifespan. From 1 billion to 30 million, it wasn't that he was frightened. He just felt he was close to succeeding and didn't want to waste lifespan. However, all failed again. Guwen's eyes began to redden. He couldn't believe it. Another 30 million years. Dare to consume 500 million years. When Guwen's thoughts settled, he still failed. Just then, he finally succeeded in his breakthrough, and a stream of memories began flowing into his mind, all about divine thought true immortal. Divine thought true immortal, divine sense transformed into divine thought, with immensely powerful thoughts that could kill enemies or cast spells through thought alone. True immortal, then, is a true immortal. His flesh and spirit underwent another transformation, and once completed, he would be an immortal conforming to the heavenly creation, not one just enhanced through cultivation. Guwen's consciousness immersed in the legacy memories. He saw many images. He could peer into the past lives of any beings that had a karmic connection with him, a very peculiar feeling. However, he couldn't see Ji Xiaoyu's past life. He could only start from where Ji Xiaoyu was born in this life. The most surprising thing for him was that he could even peek into the lives of beings with karmic ties established with Chu Lu and Shaoxing Tian. If so, doesn't this prove that reincarnation evolution could really turn into reality? This led Guwen into endless conjecture. He was immersed in the karmic images, unable to extricate himself, not feeling the slightest discomfort but rather a kind of indescribable ease. Peering into karma, his mind was filled with countless images, yet it felt as exhilarating as chi absorption cultivation, making him even more invigorated. By the time Guwen successfully broke through to the divine thought true immortal realm, he was still in those images. Cultivation continued to break through, from the first layer to the second layer, from the second layer to the third layer. Gradually, powerful beings began passing by this area, sweeping over the meteorite where he was located. Yang Jian grew more and more astonished in battle. He had gone all out, not to threaten his master, but under his master's suppression. Even the force he swung could not damage the woods. At first glance, he seemed like a martial artist who was just faster and more forceful in his movements. Blood Prison Great Saint lay on the side watching. He was not surprised, feeling that it should be so. What he cared about was Yang Jian's state. This young man's aura was getting stronger, and he could not imagine what posture Yang Jian would have once he reached the Mahayana realm. Yang Jian leaped up, slashing down furiously. Guwen raised his right hand, pinning the blade between his fingers, preventing it from pressing downward, which made Yang Jian tremble. "All right, let's stop for today." Guwen spoke, his tone calm, thereafter setting Yang Jian down. Yang Jian sheathed his blade and hurriedly bowed, his heart uneasy, unsure if he had satisfied his master. His actual cultivation had reached the 7th layer of divinity transformation realm. Other than his own efforts, he received many elixirs from Guwen. As for cultivation speed, it quite satisfied Guwen. "Let's go back. A major figure is visiting today." Guwen revealed a smile, softly speaking. Yang Jian couldn't help but be curious. What major figure? They walked towards the outside of the woods. Along the way, Blood Prison Great Saint started to evaluate Yang Jian's battle, imparting practical fighting experience, and Yang Jian, knowing his true cultivation, listened very attentively. An ancient hour later, Guwen was playing chess with Stealing the 5 Elements, watched by Nine-Finger Divine Lord, Shinshinzi, and a crowd of cultivators. Stealing the 5 Elements was frowning deeply, hesitating to make a move. Just then, a sonorous voice echoed through Supreme Sect, reverberating across the continent. "Holy Minister decrees, Sword Venerable Fudeo's merit in saving beings is notable, and he may enter the Holy Court to receive the Chi Fortune Fruit position." Upon these words, everyone in Medicine Valley looked up, and Guwen also pretended to look. After a brief silence, uproars broke out in Medicine Valley. "The Holy Court? A reward for Sword Venerable Fudao? What's the matter? What power is this Holy Court? What is Chi Fortune Fruit position? It sounds quite powerful. Who is this holy minister, daring to recruit Sword Venerable Fudao? Too arrogant." Most disciples felt dissatisfied with the Holy Court after hearing this, feeling that the Holy Court did not respect Sword Venerable Fudao. At least from these words, it seemed the Holy Court considered itself stronger than Sword Venerable Fudao. Guwen could not help but shake his head in amusement. "Recruit me? But this plot point somewhat resembles Journey to the West. Luckily, it's not recruiting me to be Horse's Fortune." A disciple couldn't help but inquire about the background of the Holy Court from Nine-Finger Divine Lord, who did not conceal anything and began to introduce the Holy Court. Hearing that the Holy Court was the overlord of the entire world, the disciples' dissatisfaction quickly dissipated. Immediately after, they started to worry about Sword Venerable Fudao leaving. Without Sword Venerable Fudao, what would they do in case of another crisis in the future? Meanwhile, Guwen sensed that the heaven and earth flying immortal who had transmitted the message had already stepped onto the heavenly repair platform. He immediately stood up to go watch the excitement. Inside the outer gate city, the crowd was buzzing. People on the heavenly repair platform were discussing the Holy Court, many also believing that the Holy Court was undervaluing Sword Venerable Fudao. A man in white walked among the crowd, his pace not quick, his long sleeves fluttering, his appearance handsome, holding a folding fan in his hand. He wore a smile on his face, his heart scornful. "A group of mortals dares to question the Holy Court?" The man in white was not angry. He would not bother with mortals over this, and since this was Sword Venerable Fudeo's territory, it would not be good to offend Sword Venerable Fudao. A great power capable of eradicating the great cold demon sect was not someone he could provoke. After delivering the holy minister's message, he did not care whether Sword Venerable Fudao agreed or not. He now wanted to try out that heaven-cutting axe. Before coming to Supreme Sect, he had heard about the legend of the heaven-cutting axe while traveling in the Taizong dynasty. Chapter 306. I am Sword Venerable Fudao. The man in white walked for a while, slowly arriving in front of the heaven-cutting axe. Zuijian saw his extraordinary bearing and couldn't help but scrutinize him with curiosity. The man in white asked with a smile, I am Lu Xianyi. May I try my hand at the heaven-cutting axe? The creatures of this continent are too weak. Naturally, it would be impossible for them to receive the inheritance of Sword Venerable Fudao. If he could achieve that, it would also be a fortuitous opportunity for him. Leaving aside his identity, for him as a heaven and earth flying immortal great cold demon sect is certainly an immovable behemoth that he could easily sweep away. The man in white speculated that Sword Venerable Fudao might possess abilities comparable to a holy king. Go ahead, but you can only pull once per day, said Zuijian, neither haughty nor humble. Over the years, he had seen too many great cultivators, and the pride in his heart had also been growing. In his eyes, the honor of Sword Venerable Fudao was even higher than the prosperity of the supreme sect. The man in white nodded and turned his gaze to the heaven-cutting axe. At the same time, Guwen stood among the crowd, watching the man in white from afar and sending out a lifespan detection. Lu Xianyi, 9 layers of heaven and earth flying immortal realm 67980/5000/890000, an extreme lifespan of 890,000 years. It was unknown what realm he could reach in his lifetime. Guwen suspected that a certain realm might once again bring a transformation of extreme lifespan, but since his breakthroughs did not increase his lifespan, he was not clear about which realm would bring about such a transformation. Furthermore, in his view, the previous great realms all had the feeling of being reborn from the ashes. Under Guwen's watchful gaze, Lu Xianyi grasped the handle of the heaven-cutting axe and his expression changed slightly. The gaze of more and more onlookers fell upon them. Anyone looking at Lu Xianyi would think that he came from an extraordinary background. Lu Xianyi began to exert force, and for a moment, the heavenly repair platform trembled slightly, but the heaven-cutting axe did not budge an inch. Zuijian's look changed when he saw Lu Xianyi shake the heavenly repair platform. It indicated that Lu Xianyi's cultivation level was extremely profound. It was too normal to not be able to lift the heaven-cutting axe. After all, Sword Venerable Fudao was unmatched in the world. At least, in Zuijian's heart, Sword Venerable Fudao was invincible. Wait a minute. This guy's voice is very similar to the one who shouted just now. It's not just similar. It's the exact same voice, just quieter, and the oppressive feeling is also restrained. Having realized this, Zuijian's gaze towards Lu Xianyi was filled with hostility. How dare this scoundrel try to poach the Sword Venerable? Outrageous. The commotion caused by Lu Xianyi attracted the attention of everyone on the heavenly repair platform, but he didn't pull for too long. After a few breaths, he released his hand. He let out a long sigh, stepped back, and said with a smile, Sword Venerable Fudao is indeed as reputed. I am impressed. After that, he raised his hand in salute to the heaven-cutting axe, then turned and left. The cultivators along the way made way for him, afraid of offending him. Just from the commotion earlier, they felt they were not in a position to provoke him. Guwen stood among the crowd and also gazed at Lu Xianyi. Soon, Lu Xianyi disappeared from the platform, prompting discussion among the cultivators there. Guwen then headed down the platform. Since he was here, he might as well take a stroll. Otherwise, stealing the 5 elements and 9-finger Divine Lord would suspect why he specifically came to watch Lu Xianyi. Of course, the most important reason was that Guwen did not want to play go with stealing the 5 elements. These guys were playing slower and slower games. Guwen certainly understood their malicious intentions. Indeed, at this moment, stealing the 5 elements was still claiming the last game was a draw. Although the others didn't believe it, stealing the 5 elements was dead set on it, and no one else wanted to pursue the matter further, as the cultivation levels were quite deterring. Guwen paid a visit to the Elixir Hall, where almost everyone recognized him, except for the disciples who had just started this year. His income from Medicine Valley was one of the highest in the entire Supreme Sect, not to mention he was also a core formation realm cultivator. Even having reached the divine thought true immortal realm, Guwen still liked to chat with others. As for the invitation from the Holy Court, he didn't want to pay it any mind. Going to the holy court was likely to cause trouble, and he certainly didn't want any of that. What if, in the process, he ended up making enemies with the holy court? Although Guin had wiped out the Ephemera sect, the Seven Stars Spirit Realm, and the Great Cold Demon sect, he was inherently kind-hearted and peace-loving. Well, if it's possible to avoid making enemies, then it's better not to. Not until dusk did Guin return to his valley, and by then, stealing the 5 elements had long since disappeared. In the days that followed, Guin noticed that Lu Xianyi had no intention of leaving the Supreme Sect. Guin couldn't help praying, hoping the man wouldn't enter his Medicine Valley. The 3rd Medicine Valley had already hidden too many monsters and devils. It couldn't house any more. Summer passed and autumn arrived. In the 3rd Medicine Valley, under an old tree, Guin held the 7 Stars mirror, using it like a fan, relaxing blissfully. Sitting opposite him, Lu Xianyi's complexion was ugly, his hand holding the ghost stones, unable to make a move for a long time. Stealing the 5 elements and 9-fingered Divine Lord sat aside, both revealing sincere smiles. A being in the 9 layers of heaven and earth flying immortal realm and still less than 70,000 years old was definitely a top-notch genius of the current era. Even stealing the 5 elements, who was also in the 9 layers of heaven and earth flying immortal realm, felt a dangerous aura from Lu Xianyi. After learning to play Go, Lu Xianyi was able to beat stealing the 5 elements on the same day. After losing the position of the second-best Go player in the world, stealing the 5 elements had always been displeased with Lu Xianyi. Today, he finally got to see Lu Xianyi get put in his place. Suddenly, Lu Xianyi raised his eyes to look at Guin and asked in a deep voice, "Impossible! Who exactly are you?" While Go is indeed exquisite, he felt that the reason the other party could win was because they anticipated his next move. This suggests what? That the opponent's deductive abilities were stronger than his own. His talent and comprehension might not be considered top-notch in the Holy Court, but he still believed he was a genius. He refused to believe that Guin's comprehension exceeded his own. There's only one possibility. This person is hiding their true cultivation level. After hearing this, Guin said with a proud smile, "I'll tell you, I am Sword Venerable Fudao. Do you believe that? Kid, you can't even recognize the Immortal Path supreme treasures in my hand and on my head, yet you aim to see through my cultivation level?" On hearing Guin's words, Lu Xianyi suddenly stood up and quickly bowed with clasped hands towards Guin, stealing the 5 elements. 9-fingered Divine Lord, and those around them, were taken aback for a moment, then burst into laughter. Lu Xianyi looked up, confused. What was so funny about that? Weren't these people afraid of offending Sword Venerable Fudao? 9-fingered Divine Lord could not help but laugh and say, "Young brother, you can inquire around if you wish. This lad is only in his 200s. How could he possibly be Sword Venerable Fudao?" Sword Venerable Fudao became famous over 100 years ago. On hearing this, Lu Xianyi looked at Guin in disbelief. Now he naturally didn't believe that Guin was Sword Venerable Fudao. What can be accomplished in 200 years? With talent like his, he could at most cultivate to the mystic heart realm. What is a realm before nirvana worth? No different from ants. Even if they said Sword Venerable Fudao was 200 years old, he wouldn't believe it. Sword Venerable Fudao must definitely be an existence that transcends the carefree primordial immortal. You? Lu Xianyi stared at Guin, quite angry. Guin stood up and said, "Someone is looking for me, you guys continue playing." Having said that, he slipped away. The Bitter Sea Buddha sect. Lu Xianyi seemed to have an idea, but he quickly shifted his gaze with no intention of approaching Shinxinzi. He observed everyone in the valley. This Medicine Valley was too peculiar. The inhabitants were either terrifyingly weak or concealed immortals, with an enormous disparity. Suddenly, his gaze was again drawn to one person, and this time his eyes latched on. Following his line of sight, it was Yang Jian who was weeding. Due to the vast gulf in their cultivation, Yang Jian, who had his back to Lu Xianyi, did not detect anything unusual. until a voice came from behind him. "What is your name?" Yang Jian subconsciously stood up and turned around. He had seen Lu Xianyi from a distance before and knew that the other party had an important status and was not a simple cultivator. "My name is Yang Jian. May I know what matter brings you here, senior?" Yang Jian bowed with clasped hands, striking a balance between respect and not coming across as obsequious. Yang Jian, Lu Xianyi mused, recalling having heard this name before. It was mentioned by two Supreme Sect disciples in conversation, with one claiming that true Lord Erlang Yang Jian was more formidable than the great sage equaling heaven. The two even quarreled about it in the end. You're tuning in to the Legend of the Vagabond YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.